The meeting is now open. I'm going to move on to the first application, which is going to be presented by Graham. Oh, sorry, forgive me.
Katie, have you got a copy of the agenda?
Okay, apologies for that. Which brings me nicely on to apologies for absence. Have we received any?
Received apologies from Councillor Lancaster in place of Councillor Quigg, and we've received apologies from Councillor Charles as a sub is Councillor Hussain.
Thank you. Do we have any urgent business?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any Councillor Williams? Okay, Councillor Williams, and if people do forget, we'll get them to repeat their words. We've no declarations of interest then? Councillor?
Chair, I do in item 7 as a board member of Jigsaw Homes.
Okay, can we note that please? Now we move on to public question time.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. We have the minutes from the previous meetings. Have we reviewed them, and can we get a view to adopting them? Do we get a seconder? All in favour? That's passed, thank you. Okay, now we move on to the first item of tonight's meeting, as presented by Graham.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for a site off Aven Lane. It's an application to vary a condition on a previous approval that was granted on appeal in 2019. The condition in question was one which required a traffic calming scheme to be implemented along part of Aven Lane before the development was first occupied. The scheme that was actually approved by the planning inspector is one that our highways officers have subsequently looked at in detail and do not consider is actually practical to be implemented in the form that it had actually originally been approved. Therefore, this application involves a revised traffic calming scheme to be implemented along that road to a design which the highways officers consider would be appropriate and satisfactory. It's also an application to allow 15 of those dwellings to be occupied before the approved traffic calming scheme actually is implemented. And as members may know, you'll see some of the representations that have been made on the application. The development has already started quite some time ago, and many of the dwellings are actually well advanced in construction and nearing potential completion on the site. So that's the reason for that. So this is the site itself. It's on the east side of Aven Lane. As I say, the principle of this development, that's already been established by the previous appeal decision. It's a development of 23 dwellings on the site. A detailed reserved matters application has been granted for those, so that includes the types of properties and so forth, and the detailed layout. This is one showing the traffic calming measures as now proposed. There's main elements to these. There is a raised platform at the southern section of the site. Main elements of these are at the junction with Haw Hill Road, which involves reconfiguration of that junction, putting a central island in for pedestrians across the entrance to that area, and various other aspects such as a raised platform and some other traffic calming measures further up along Aven Lane. So as I say, this is a detailed scheme that the highways officers have worked on themselves and are satisfied would be workable within the site. So this is the first, this is where the platform is going to effectively go at Rushton Grove Junction. So it's just showing obviously the existing situation there. It's quite a long open stretch of road. And these are showing you the Orhill Road junction itself, which as you can see from the top pictorial image there, it's quite a wide junction at the moment, so obviously only pedestrians crossing there. It's quite a distance to actually traverse, so the scheme would actually alter the radii at the entrance to that, and as I say, provide a central island to improve safety there. And you can see that there's some speed humps just to the south of that area, and then other measures immediately to the north. So the picture at the bottom there is showing you the section to the north where there's going to be a traffic hump put in place at that point. So as I said, this is application. It's not to do with the details of the proposal. It's merely to decide whether the proposed traffic calming scheme can be replaced in the condition with the scheme which the highways officers consider is more appropriate in that area, and taking into consideration the fact that the development is well underway, whether members also are satisfied to allow a number of those properties to be occupied before those works are implemented. It should be noted that there is a separate process that members will be aware of for the implementation of traffic calming measures under the Highways Act, and obviously the planning is only one element of that, and a separate process will need to be undertaken if members are satisfied with this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. That was very detailed. Has any members got any questions for the officer? Sorry, I just got to state this. Next time, can we have the font bigger? Because of my eyes, I can't. So if I don't mention you by name, I'm not being ignorant, okay?
It's my question to Wendy. The initial application for the traffic calm measure, what was the problem? Why did they need to be changed?
I'll give you the short answer and then I'll probably have to give the long answer later on. So normally when we attach a condition for traffic calming, we say a traffic calming scheme must be constructed in accordance with details to be provided, because we know that we haven't done the detailed design at this stage when a planning application is brought to committee because of the costs and the other things, and it might not get permission. The planning inspector, it was refused at committee, it was allowed at appeal. The planning inspector, the condition was in accordance with the drawing that the applicant had submitted. So we hadn't done a detailed design. But the purpose of the traffic calming is to reduce the speeds. This will do that, and that's the whole purpose of it. So it doesn't matter that this is different, it will still have the same purpose of reducing the speeds along Aven Lane. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah, certainly.
Was there a public consultation on the actual proposed designs?
Not the type of consultation that will now happen on if this is approved this evening, no, because that's part of the separate process that Graham's just spoken about. That's the highway side of it, so it goes to TRO panel.
So it could change if there's a consultation and things come up?
It's very unlikely to change significantly because we're happy with this. The highway engineers who will take it to panel are happy with this scheme and happy that it can be delivered.
Councillor Williamson?
It going to TRO if it's not really going to change?
So taking it to we take it to TRO because it may get approved here this evening, and then it has to go to TRO as part of the highway processes. So it then goes out to consultation, and then it gets taken to the TRO panel. So any changes will be minor, because we know that this can be delivered. We've got to take it to TRO panel. We haven't got a choice.
If Peter could come in.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to what Wendy said and clarify in terms of, it is a separate process, first of all. So, and it's not necessarily that through the TRO process that it will never change. There can be situations where the TRO panel do not approve it, or I mean, we've had a case in the borough recently where there's been an appeal in relation to a TRO decision and what have you. So there are instances, but what Wendy's trying to get across is obviously highways have been involved in this already. We know this is a good scheme that achieves what needs to be achieved in terms of traffic calming. So at this point in time, there is no good reason why the TRO panel would reject this, because it does what it says in the tin, if you can put it that way, you know. So, but it doesn't mean there isn't a possibility, just to answer your question in that respect.
Councillor Dean.
Thanks,
Davis. Sorry, here we are with the font. Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, the first thing is, by the way, I think we need to acknowledge some people who aren't on this committee anymore, and thanks for the service. So if I can do that, I'm not allowed to, but I have done anyway.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Thanks to them. The other thing is some people at the back here who can't hear very well. So I don't know what we can do about that. But the other question is, if this is refused by TRO and this traffic calming doesn't go through, I might have missed something here, but what happens with the application? Does it still go ahead?
So again, bearing in mind this application is purely about the variation to the condition, so it's about the traffic calming. In that scenario, obviously a revised scheme would have to be worked up and brought back to us, because we're approving this scheme tonight from a planning point of view. It's one of those nuances of the system in terms of there's two different processes having to take place, a planning one and a highways one, and normally in 99.9% of cases they align and it's all fine. Very occasionally there's a different, but in that case they would have to come back to us with a new application.
So if I'm allowed to come back on that then, so really we don't really need to, we can't really take that into account with the traffic calming measures, can we really, on this committee tonight?
If I may, Chair.
You may.
You take into account from the planning point of view. So from a planning point of view, we are happy with these proposals tonight. From a planning point of view, we can grant permission. Then from a highways point of view in the TRO panel, they have to also cover it from their basis. I mean, Alan, I don't know if there's anything you can add on this, because I know you're involved with the TRO panel, aren't you?
The only point I'd make, Chair, just for clarification, is it will only go to TRO panel if we get objections. Now, I probably assume that we will, but it's not automatically that any proposals go to TRO panel. It's only if we get objections to it. And looking at some of what's proposed there, some of the proposals wouldn't be things that would go to TRO panel anyway, because it's officers can deal with those slight tweaks to the highway layout without having to go to TRO panel.
Okay, we got any more members? Councillor?
It's slightly different. It's the permitted occupation of the properties. I thought that was a condition from the inspector.
Yes, that is a condition for the inspector. So effectively, members have got two decisions that they need to make tonight. One is to accept the revised traffic calming scheme, and the second one is to allow up to 15 of those properties to be occupied. As some of the discussions outlined, there's another process still needs to take place, and then even following that process, you've got to obviously have a construction period for these works to be implemented. The issue could well be that if that part of the condition isn't varied, we will have a development that's largely complete, but property is lying empty for some period of time. I mean, obviously, as we know, you get scenarios like that, they can cause problems in themselves. They can attract antisocial behaviour and so forth. So there's a payoff between the two, but I think Wendy will probably confirm that, there's a wider issue with the traffic calming along Aven Lane, and this is part of that overall scheme. So it's not just, this scheme won't just deal with the additional cars coming off Aven Lane, it will deal with more general traffic that's coming down there. So the 15 houses, the amount of traffic coming and going from that for a period of months, which is probably what we're talking about, would not cause such a significant highway problem that we couldn't live with that situation. But obviously the development still couldn't be completed until those measures are put in place. And it's a kind of compromise in a way, but it's one that works. And as I say, I'm sure Wendy would confirm that the highways officers, when they've looked at it, are satisfied with that situation. And that's why obviously we're recommending approval of that element as well.
Would you like to confirm that, Wendy, before I go over to Councillor Williamson?
Yep, I confirm everything that Graham's just said. It's a continuation of the traffic calming already on Count Hill Road and Aven Lane. And it is required because if we've suddenly got this area where there's no traffic calming, you've potentially got drivers that think they can speed up. So it's incredibly important that this length of traffic calming is completed along Aven Lane.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson?
2 points. There were 17 comments. I went on the website earlier on and there's 36. So I'm not sure why there's such a disparity between the numbers. You don't have to clarify that now, but I would like to. But the other thing is that I'm trying to make a decision about something that I shouldn't be making a decision about. And there are other areas in Oldham where stuff should have been done and could have been done to alleviate a problem and have been done through the right process. This doesn't appear to me to be doing that. It seems to be, we've got to do this, then this can happen, but maybe it won't. And then that can happen, but maybe that won't. So if somebody makes a different decision, then it won't happen. And I am slightly confused, and I'm sure those people that can hear in the room are probably asking themselves what's going on.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Harkness?
Yeah, I suppose it's... so usually, Wendy, you said that in this process we would put down and say to be determined sort of later by the other process, and then obviously that then goes to consultation and that sort of thing. And obviously on this occasion, the planning inspector has decided to put something in place which is not viable. I presume we can't now go and say at this stage, well, actually, let's just do what we would normally do and do that. We still have to do something tonight. Obviously, it'll still go to the TRO panel.
Absolutely, that's what I wanted to say. So normally, when I said before, we say in accordance, a traffic calming scheme in accordance with details to be submitted. You never see those details because we deal with them as part of the condition discharge application. It's only because the planning inspector said, in accordance with this drawing, that the applicant submitted that we hadn't done a detailed design on, that it's actually back here. So normally you don't see what happens because it's just dealt with. So we're very confident that this scheme can be delivered technically.
Yes, Peter, if you want to interject.
In terms of what Councillor Hartnett was asking, I mean, in terms of that is a possibility that obviously the variation of condition could be worded in the way we would normally do in a situation where we have the full application before us for the development. I think at this point in time, of course, though, as I say, the development is half complete, should we say? So I think it's the sense of we're at that point now where, given the inspector imposed a scheme for the traffic calming that is not workable, it's trying to this application is trying to say, well, here's the alternative scheme, so that members know this is what's being proposed, as opposed to dealing with a condition that then needs a further discharge of condition application down the line, which would, as Wendy says, we as officers would deal with under our delegations.
Is that clear, Councillor Harkness? Okay, thank you. Any more members' questions? Go ahead, Graham.
Yeah, just on the point about the numbers of objections to it, we just had a look on the website. There are actually 16, not 6, on the website. Obviously 17 in the report. Sometimes people still email in or write in separately, so it might not show on that list, but there's, if you like, there's a difference between 16 and 17, so...
If I come in. Councillor Williams, I've got it up on my screen for VAR 352-405/24, and it's got 16 public comments on the tab. I think you might be looking at one of the other applications that have previously been determined. No problem.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any further members' questions? Okay, I believe we have someone who'd like to speak to object against this proposal. And Mr. Cash, if you could come forward, Mr. Cash, and take a seat, please. So, absolutely, it's fine. Yeah, no problem. Okay, thank you, Mr. Cash. Now, you're limited to 3 minutes, and I'm not sure who's going to do the timing, and there isn't a big clock behind me, so how are you going to time? So,
I'll do my best.
Do your best, and if you need to take a little pause or anything, just feel free. Off you go when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
Thank you
for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of MIRA, Moorside East Residents Association. PA 3388 17/16 was the original scheme presented to the committee 8 years ago. The scheme was refused by this council. One of the reasons was on highways grounds. This should have been included in the planning history section of the report. The developer appealed this refusal, and later a planning inspector approved the scheme, but with a condition that the highway traffic calming be completed prior to any properties being occupied, realising that a dangerous situation would exist if works were not in place. Are there any safeguards in place that highways work will ever be completed, or are the residents at risk forever? It is accepted by highways that traffic calming is required. So why did the highways officer originally agree to the traffic calming scheme at both the council planning meeting and the inspector's hearing, when it is now accepted it could not be delivered? Traffic calming details and implementation should have been attended to in the intervening 6 years since the inspector's approval. The main question the committee must decide is, why are we now being asked to put our residents at risk? The developer has had 6 years to present a scheme to make access safe and seek approval, so it could have complied with the condition. Why, therefore, did the developer leave it until the houses were completed? Is it their idea of putting pressure on the authority to approve the application? Why would the committee approve something that puts residents at risk when the developer has blatantly ignored the conditions set out by the planning inspector? MIRA's own survey of local opinion produced 67 signed objections to this application.
30 seconds.
Got 30 seconds left, love, you're okay.
Yeah, so why put the authority in a position where it may be culpable should an accident occur? It is your responsibility as councillors to keep your consistency safe, but by approving this application, you would be endangering constituents simply to benefit a developer that has consistently ignored the council's wishes. We would request the committee to refuse the application on grounds of highway safety. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Cash. That was very clear and very well delivered. I'm just asking if any members have got any questions for Mr. Cash. Councillor?
Thanks, Chair. So, you're happy with this traffic calming scheme, are you? Are you happy with this traffic calming scheme?
Absolutely not, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's clear.
Thank you. Any other members' questions for Mr. Cash? Okay, Mr. Cash, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I believe we have the agent for the developer, Mr. Leith, if you'd like to come forward. Thank you. And as you know, it's 3 minutes on the go when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. As explained fully, the initial outline planning approval for 23 new homes was secured by appeal by the original landowner, not by the current developer, which included the detailed approval for the traffic calming works as set out in Condition 17. The two parts to Condition 17, the first part being the details of the specific calming measures, the raised table and the 2 sets of speed cushions, and the second part being the traffic calming works to be completed prior to any houses being occupied. Following approval of the reserved matters application, Oldham Council Highways officers confirmed that the approved traffic calming design was no longer suited to current traffic conditions as previously explained. The applicant, Cube Homes, therefore had to submit the Section 73 variation of condition to reflect the updated traffic calming design as drawn by Oldham Council, which now includes the junction plateau, slight narrowing of the Haw Hill Road junction, a tapered table and a pair of speed cushions. A public consultation was held on the 15th of February 2024 at St Thomas's Church, where we illustrated the proposed revised design for the traffic calming works for Aven Lane. The reason the applicant, Cube Homes, has requested to change the second part of Condition 17, which relates to the timing of when homes can be occupied, is because Oldham Council reserved the right to implement the revised traffic calming works without commitment to a specific timescale. Originally, it was proposed that the developer, Cube Homes, would progress with carrying out those works, but further discussion led to Oldham Council taking a decision that they would implement those themselves, however, without commitment to a specific time frame. Therefore, in order for Cube Homes to avoid the risk of having too many completed but empty homes on the development with associated security, insurance and sales risks, whilst waiting for the traffic calming works to be completed, the application has requested that 15 of the homes can be occupied prior to these works being finished. This would still leave 8 homes that would not be occupied prior to these works being completed, ensuring that the principle of the original condition is still upheld. We feel, therefore, that these proposals strike a balance that ensures the traffic calming works can get implemented by Oldham Council, whilst allowing the applicant some flexibility to protect their investment and the homes of future residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Leith. Do we have any members' questions for the developer's agent? No, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I believe we have a couple of ward councillors who'd like to speak on behalf of this matter. Invite Councillor Charters. Can we go at our pace and not yours? When you're ready, Councillor Charters. I think it's 3 minutes, is it? Is it 5 minutes?
Thank you very much, Katie. So I called this application into the committee a couple of months ago because I wanted to discuss the variations. These weren't applied by the council. These were applied by the planning inspectorate. I think it's really important that this decision shouldn't have been made at a delegated level if it had gone all the way to the planning inspectorate to be placed on this application. The planning inspectorate's exact words are, on the basis that construction traffic for the housing would use Aven Lane, it would be more appropriate for the condition to be worded so that the traffic calming is provided prior to the occupation of dwellings. So my main objection tonight is the occupation of the homes prior to any works being done. I understand that the change to the traffic calming was explained by Wendy around. It wasn't agreed. Wasn't agreed measures at the time, and obviously it hadn't been looked into properly. However, I think the objections that have been raised by Mr. Cash so far, and I imagine by Councillor Sharp later, will go into this a bit more. What I'd like to just raise with the committee, though, is that I think one of the councillors mentioned this before. Why are we discussing this if it then has to go to be approved at TRO? Because we need to have a full consultation. The consultation raised by the agent didn't, I mean, I attended myself, it didn't feel much like a consultation. It more felt like this is a presentation of our plans that will be happening. And something I've always been quite proud of, especially in St James as ward councillor, is that I tell people I don't want to do politics to them, I want to do it with them. And I don't want people to feel like they're being forced down a route, which is how that how the entire sort of consultation has felt so far. Like Mr. Cash said, there has been a number of local residents who've written objections against this. Again, it was rejected originally at Oldham Council's Planning Committee. It was approved by the Planning Inspectorate, which I know many are still unhappy with locally. And speaking to people in the area, they don't feel the need for the traffic calming measures as described, because how the road is set out naturally does slow traffic. Wendy mentioned before that we can't have a traffic calming at the top of Aven Lane and on Count Hill Road without having it at the bottom, but we've had that for a number of years now, and to my knowledge there hasn't been any serious incidents, and any incidents that have happened have occurred due to careless driving rather than to the road itself. I'm not going to use my full 5 minutes, but it was nice to know I had it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Charters. Do any members wish to ask the councillor any questions? Councillor.
Thanks. Just have you spoken to? I presume, as a local councillor, you've spoken to a lot of residents about this issue, and what would you say? That I've just going through the comments, and I've gone through the comments before, but what would you say that they have mainly brought up to you about, and that they thought that you could probably maybe change or explain it a bit more?
So a lot of the residents who got in touch with me, who I've spoken to, were knocking on doors and who I met at the consultation event, were really concerned about the fact that these plans had sort of come out of nowhere. They hadn't been informed or anything. They hadn't been given any chance to feed in. People were concerned about how it would affect how they park outside their homes. It would affect the noise levels outside their homes if they're going to have a speed table right outside where their house is. Yeah. People were concerned about the access to Hall Hill Road and how that's going to change. People were just, again, I mean, like I said, people were sick of things being done to them without any collaboration. I think this would have been a lot better if people had been invited in to have their say and come up with a solution, rather than just, here's a drawing of some plans. We're going to do this. It's going through the planning. It's going through the planning team, and it will be put in, and we're going to move 15 people in before it's done.
Thank you.
Councillor Cosgrove? Oh, you're happy. That's fine. Any more, Councillor?
Thanks, Chair. So, as a ward councillor, and our councillors, because there's others coming, there's been consultation with the residents. Have they actually voted on this scheme? Because we've had a scheme proposed in Failsworth, and it was put to people, and they rejected it. So is it the same situation here? Have people rejected this scheme?
So, again, like Mr. Cash mentioned when he spoke on behalf of a number of residents, I believe around 70, was it 67? People have rejected the scheme and opposed it. But people haven't felt that they've had the chance to have a proper say, which is why I'm here tonight to speak, why Councillor Sharp's going to be speaking as well. We're here on behalf of those residents to say that they're not happy with this, and that we think that the planning committee should reject these and return to the original conditions as set out by the planning inspectorate.
Thank you, Councillor Charters. Any more questions? No? Thank you. Councillor Sharp? We've established it's 5 minutes.
Thank you. So yeah, first of all, I would just like to say that I think it says an awful lot that both Councillor Charters and I are both here to speak on behalf of residents, because it's cross-party and it clearly shows the residents' feeling on this. So as committee members will be aware, this overall application has a long history and residents have faced long-standing issues with the development. First of all, it is clear that the original planning approval was subject to traffic calming being installed on Aven Lane before any of the properties could be occupied. The traffic calming layout that was approved in principle by the appeal inspector was also subject to the outcome of a public consultation. Residents accepted that some form of traffic calming would have to take place for the developer to mitigate the dangerous access point to the site, and had an outline of what these plans would look like for a number of years. This application comes at a time when residents are facing their drives and pavements being blocked by workers on site. They've got brown water flooding the road constantly, early Saturday morning loud working hours, and debris all over the road. It just feels like another kick in the teeth to local residents. Aven Lane already has a high number of properties that park their cars on either side of the road, which naturally slows other vehicles passing through. Residents are highly concerned about the new plans, including the impact the plateau on the entrance and the exit to Rushton Grove would have, and also the condition of the road, which already floods every time there is heavy rainfall. I would also like to raise my strong concern and objection to any costs which have been made to alter these traffic calming proposals coming from Oldham taxpayers. Residents have experienced a challenging number of years, both before and during the development, and both myself and Councillor Charters outlined this to the developer when these proposals were initially brought forward. As a local authority, Oldham Council has a responsibility for ensuring that local decisions about street infrastructure take account of the needs and opinions of the local people. Without a public consultation, how can this be possible? I've read some of the objections on the online portal, and as Mr. Cash outlined, there are far more people that would object. It's quite clear that residents of Aven Lane feel completely let down by the developer and Oldham Council, and to amend this condition would just be insult to injury. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. I'd like to personally acknowledge my delight that you and Councillor Charters have reached a cross-party consensus on an issue. Do we have any questions, Councillor Williams?
Same question to you. So obviously you've had cross-party talks with Josh, but what did the residents say anything different to you, or was it near enough exactly the same?
Exactly the same. So I have also been to planning committee for the previous application that was brought to from here, and it is literally one of the main issues that residents of Aven Lane and wider roads always bring up to me. It's been a constant for them for more years than I've been a councillor, and they're just completely fed up and sick of it. And like Josh said, you have to bring people along the ride to make it an easier process for them, and this has just not happened. And I think if their day-to-day lives weren't being so, challenged every day by the developer on site, then they may have been a bit more relaxed with the proposals, but absolutely not.
Councillor Harkness.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously the fallback position would be what the planning inspectorate said previously. Would you say that was more preferable to what we've got now? And obviously this is still going to go to our panel. But yeah.
I would say so. I think residents had time to come to terms with those decisions, but I think apart from the traffic calming measures, the main issue is that the property should not be occupied until things are put into place. That was a condition that was set out and that should be stuck to.
Councillor Cosgrove.
It's just a question regarding if 15 houses were occupied and the cars that come with that, how do you and the local residents feel that would affect the existing road?
I think it would affect the road massively. You know, if you think about 15 properties, most dwellings these days have 2 cars, and those are big houses that are going in Aven Lane. So it's not just 15 cars, it's probably 30 cars on top of a road that's used as a cut through from Ripondon Road. It will have a huge impact.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Excuse me. Do we have any further members' questions for Councillor Sharp? No? Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Okay, I'm now going to open the floor to debate amongst members. Has anybody got any points or anything they wish to start off with? Councillor.
Clearly, as far as I'm concerned on this one, I'm not happy in any shape or form that I've got to make a decision on this with being told that something's got to be accepted that the residents don't appear to want. They don't seem to want this traffic calming scheme. So why should they have it implemented on them on top of everything else? I'm not happy with it at all.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Do we have any more? Councillor?
Yeah, could you explain to us again in terms of why can't the initial traffic calming scheme be implemented? Because obviously the residents have actually sort of bought into that and they're quite content with it. So what is the issue that it can't be delivered?
Thank you, Councillor. Any responses? Sorry for Wendy, this one.
Right, so I'll say again, when the original planning application came to committee, we agreed as a local highway authority that traffic calming was required. And normally we say a scheme to be delivered in accordance with details to be submitted, because then at that stage we've got agreements in place with the developer. The council don't bear the cost then of doing the detailed design. So we thought we had a scheme that was deliverable, but once the detailed design was carried out, it was found that it wasn't deliverable because with the plateau, we can't put the plateau in and get the correct drainage and not have any. We've got level problems as well, so that you'd have backfall so that the water would run into properties, and we can't mitigate against that. If we could have delivered the original scheme, we would have. But because it was imposed as a condition rather than in accordance with details to be submitted, we're now looking at a different scheme. If it had been in accordance with details, we still could have potentially delivered this scheme, because the scheme that you saw at the original planning committee meeting was indicative, and it always is indicative if you ever see a scheme, because it hasn't been agreed. There has been some discussion tonight about whether that will change, and I'll say again, it's very unlikely to change significantly. And again, if it hadn't been imposed as a condition without any further details, many residents may not even, or many residents and councillors may not even have realised that it had changed, because it's still going to achieve the reduction in speed. And it will be a continuation of the existing traffic calming measures along Count Hill Road and Haven Lane.
Thank you, Wendy. Councillor Hartness?
Yes, so whichever this goes, is it possible, because obviously a couple of the councillors and the first speaker as well about the traffic calming measures, about properties being people living in them before the traffic calming measures put in place. And so is it possible that we could look at some sort of condition if it went one way, the properties would not be occupied until a traffic calming measure, or is that not viable, possible as part of this application?
So essentially, yes, you have got that option. You can choose to grant a different, a varied wording to the condition that's been proposed by the applicant. So, for example, you may choose to accept the scheme but require that it can't be, no houses can be occupied still until it is complete. That is an option open to you. The reason we as officers haven't recommended that is because ultimately, as Graham set out before, the risk with that is then you end up with a series of empty properties that are complete, waiting to be occupied, that can't be occupied, potentially for quite a long period of time, therefore potentially attracting antisocial behaviour or whatever it might be. It also runs the risk potentially of, we've obviously heard tonight about concerns around the impacts of the construction. It could also extend the whole length of the construction of the whole site in that sense. So I think, you know, as a planning authority, we have to be reasonable. And we ultimately came to the view that as long as this is still delivered at some point during the development, and we put, and the applicant asked for by 15 dwellings, it would be appropriate, it would be reasonable to accept this in this situation. I do understand the concerns that have been raised, and it is an option open to you, as I say, but obviously we as officers have come to that view.
Thank you, Peter. Can I ask a question? Oh, thank you, Peter. Could we reduce the number of occupied houses from 15 to 8 if it was in our mind to do so? Because obviously I'm mindful that in terms of the development to continue, from a cash flow point of view, I imagine they've got to generate cash to basically lay out for this scheme, which is quite valid. So would that be an option?
Yes, you could change that number from 15 to whatever you want to.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question?
Certainly.
How many properties have been developed on there currently then?
Unfortunately, I haven't got the figure that's actually of those that are nearing completion. But my understanding is, I mean, effectively the applicant has applied for the condition to be varied in this way on the assumption that there will be the similar number of properties which will come through to being completed and ready for occupation by the time, so if members were to say yes to this tonight, by the time it's gone through the TRO process and been implemented, their expectation is that the 15 will certainly be complete and ready for occupation by that timescale.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
What's the timescale between the 15 properties being completed and the final end of product, 23 properties? How long will it take to complete the whole project?
Ultimately, we're not in control of that. You know, it could have been a question you could have asked the agent. They may have known the answer, but it's obviously we're not in control of how quickly they develop the site out in that regard. So, I mean, obviously taking the simple numbers, if it takes however long it might take to take 15 dwellings, half that would you'd assume to complete the remaining 8.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Cosgrove.
It's just a query. Does this mean we'll have construction traffic in the same road as people living there coming up to and from work? Will they mix me up? Because looking at it, it's one road in, one road out.
Do you mean living on the development site or living?
We actually let people occupy the houses. They'll be living next to a construction site, won't they? So
Yeah,
does that mean we've got construction vehicles going to and from past people living in the houses?
Yes, and as
And
someone
residential vehicles as well as construction vehicles?
as someone who bought a new build house last time I moved house, that's standard. That's normal.
Okay.
Councillor?
Could we ask the question from the agent, if possible, to give us some kind of indication? Because if there's a really long gap.
Yes, I will allow that question.
Okay.
If the agent would like to come forward, please. Thank you, Mr. Leaf. Just one brief question from the councillor, if you could answer, please.
Between the completion of 15 houses and the full 23, what kind of timescale are you looking at?
The proposed programme is for houses to start being completed this summer, with the remaining number to be completed later in the autumn of this year.
Thank you, Mr. Leaf. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more members' input? Councillor?
So the speed calming part, is that the council that's going to be doing that? And what's the time frame on that? Because you get the 15 houses done, roughly how long would that take? Just to add that on for clarity.
Yes, sorry. Sorry.
So part of the highway process will involve consultation, then it has to be formally advertised, and then if objections are received, I think there are amendments to the report. If I say anything wrong, Alan will make sure you get the correct information. I spoke to the highway engineer that will actually deal with this, and he would expect the report to be taken to panel in September. And then we've got to, if it is approved, then we've got to make sure that we can deliver the work. So we've just had autumn mentioned, so we're going into autumn there.
Councillor?
So, is it possible the development could have been developed before we start any work? Yeah. If it's completed by autumn?
Sir?
So, two things. First of all, in terms of Councillor's first question, first of all, yes, it is the council that would deliver this. In terms of the timescales, the development could be complete, but it couldn't be occupied, or it's not all of it could be occupied, depending on what you decide tonight in terms of this variation of condition. So if the agent is correct and the programme is fulfilled by autumn, and the sites are all the houses are complete by the autumn, yes, it sounds like there would be a delay where some are standing empty while we as a council deliver the actual traffic calming scheme.
Thank you, Peter.
So, same, we could have the antisocial behaviour and not everything we talked about earlier on, because of the timescales.
Sorry, but just about, I mean, it's just a sideline comment really to some extent. By that point, if committee agrees that some of those properties will be occupied, even though there will be some on that estate that might still be empty, as Peter says, if you buy on a new build estate, you will live amongst properties that are still empty at that point. So you'll get supervision. So those residents who live on that street will be there, so there'll be people there overnight and so on. So even though a few of the properties might still be vacant, you will get the supervision, whereas the alternative could be that the whole estate is dead, if you like, at night, and then there's the potential for that antisocial behaviour to occur. So I think the situation is would be slightly different in those circumstances. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any more points from members? No? Okay, well, there's a number of options on the table. Would you just like to give us an overview of them options, Peter? Thank you.
Well, obviously it's now for someone on the committee to put forward a motion. And obviously you can either put forward the motion that we have recommended as officers, or you can make an amendment to that, or you can outright refuse the application. obviously depending on what you put forward and discussion, myself, Graham, Wendy, Alan will be able to advise a final set of advice on those options.
Thank you for that. Do we have any members wishing to propose, reject,
Just a few
adjust?
Minutes, just a few minutes to think, maybe.
No, that's fine. Take your time.
Chair, can I put a proposal through?
You can, councillor.
I would agree with the motion with a condition that there's only 8 properties occupied, and obviously those 8 occupants would obviously know that they're moving into an area or, you know, of that dwelling. That's just a proposal for myself.
Thank you for that, councillor. Would you like a few minutes to reflect on that proposal, or do we get a seconder? Councillor Williams, son?
No, Chair. I think because of the process, I feel it's a bit backwards. I would refuse it, really, because I think it needs to go to TRO first, like other applications. So if there's an amendment to it that the council thinks it needs to have to make it better, then that, for me, would be obvious choice.
Just bring Peter on this.
So, a couple of things. First of all, just as a point of order, obviously we need to bottom out Councillor Nasheen's motion first, so if anyone's going to second that before we consider an alternative motion. But just in terms of what Councillor Williams has suggested, the way the processes work, you can't do the TRO before you've done the planning. So that's not an option open to you. Obviously, the option to refuse is still open to you, but it doesn't mean that it'll go to TRO panel first and then come back to planning committee at a later date.
Thank you, Peter. So, do we have a seconder for Councillor Nasheen's proposal? Okay, no problem, Councillor.
I just need to come in here. If people are going to make a decision here, there might be other options. So I think they need to be on the table when people consider what they're going to vote for on this one.
I think, Councillor Davis, I think Peter sort of intimated what the options were, i.e. reject, refuse or amend. Do you need any more clarity from the officers, Councillor Davis?
He said what the options are, but people might vote on this thinking that another option hasn't been proposed. I think somebody should be able to propose something else. And if that was the case, I'd back Councillor Williamson to reject it, if that was the case.
I think we have to go through process order, and I believe if a motion's been submitted, if it is put for a seconder and then it's put to the vote, and if we don't get the required seconder, then obviously the next proposal takes precedence. So I'll reiterate, do we have a seconder for Councillor Nasheen's proposal, motion? Is that the right word, motion? Yeah, motion. So clearly the answer is no. So we'll move on to any other motion. Councillor Williamson?
And I've just seconded that, Chair.
Okay, well, I think we go to the vote then. Do we? No, sorry, Peter, go on.
So, as ever in these situations where there's a motion to refuse against the offer recommendation, Alan and I have to give you the, if you like, a health warning on that, in the sense of, obviously we have as officers with our professional view made a recommendation to approve. The applicant will have a right of appeal, and as with the original outline application for this, where they appealed, the original landowner appealed the decision, and the appeal was upheld by an inspector, and significant costs were awarded against the council. There is the same risk in this situation. there is a risk of costs being awarded against the council if the inspector considers that we have been unreasonable in the way that we have managed it. So the crucial thing here is a motion's been put forward to refuse. I do need a robust planning reason why it is to be refused, because that's what's going to have to be defended. And likewise, as part of the motion, someone needs to volunteer, a member of the committee needs to volunteer to be the person that puts forward the case at appeal if one arises, because in that situation we as officers can't defend the appeal given the recommendation we've already given.
Thank you, Peter.
Can
Councillor?
I just ask one other question before we decide? When it was, what were the costs involved when it was appealed? That's one thing. And secondly, when, I mean, this project is bound to, be completed in the autumn, which is not far from now. If there was to, what's it called, put the measures in after autumn, what would be the timescale in that? Would that take another 3 months after that?
Sorry, I didn't quite follow the second part of that question.
If the agents advise that the project will be completed by autumn, the whole complete project, right? That's in September. We're not far from, that date now. So could we not put the measures in place then, and then because we're looking at how many months now? We're in June, July, August, September, October, 4 months.
Okay, so in terms of the first question about the level of the cost, I don't have the exact figures to hand, unfortunately, so I can't answer that question, but we can look it up and let you know later in the week if that's okay. In terms of the process, if it was refused tonight, obviously there's nothing stopping the developer from going on and completing the actual development of the houses. They just can't be occupied because of the way the condition is. And in terms of then when and what they could implement as a traffic calming measure, at the moment all they have permission for is the scheme that was approved, the drawing that was approved by the inspector, which is, as Wendy's outlined. From a highways authority point of view of this council, that's not implementable. It will cause drainage problems on the wider road and potentially risk water running into other people's properties. So basically we would be left with a completed development, unoccupied, and no traffic calming, just stood there.
Councillor Davis, do you have
as far as I'm concerned, Chair, there's talk here about with the ward council saying they want the scheme in place, but I think the residents don't even want this scheme outside their houses. And I think that's a big problem here. Have I not heard something here or what? I don't know, but I think that's a massive problem. As I said, why should we be told by someone in London or wherever they are that we've got to do something here in Oldham? We know this area best. We've had the ward councillor speaking on it. And as I said, we had a scheme in Failsworth, but it was rejected and it didn't go ahead. Well, this one, if the residents don't want this one, it shouldn't go ahead.
Peter, could you just clarify the mechanics of one against the other? Yeah. I.e. the Failsworth one in retrospect to this?
I can't clarify that because I don't know the particular details of that Failsworth scheme, so I would be speaking in ignorance about that particular scheme. What I can say is, in terms of, just to clarify, in terms of the scheme that's on the screen now, which is what has been proposed, that has been designed with our highways engineers. So it's not been done just by the applicant in isolation. Sorry if this wasn't clearer earlier. Ultimately, in the same way that, as Wendy described before, in a normal circumstance where we would put a condition on that's more general, then would be a process with our highways colleagues, between the applicant and the highways authority, to develop or design a suitable scheme. In effect, that's what we've done in the background to arrive at a scheme that we can implement, whereas the scheme that the inspector approved we can't implement. So the upshot at this point in time is, if this application isn't approved in some form tonight, as I outlined before in terms of the previous councillor's question, we could end up in a situation with homes built but empty and no traffic calming and no prospect for those homes to be occupied.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Holbin, then Councillor Quigg, and then Councillor Williamson. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There seems to be an overlap with this, with everybody's talking about here, and I need to get my head around it as well. So, for me, it's as though the traffic calming, that's the big issue that I think is being thrown at us here, that they don't want traffic calming whatever with this development. Shouldn't that be an argument for another place rather than planning? Is my first question. Shouldn't that be the residents going to the TRO to say no to the traffic calming measures? So I'd like clarification on that's an argument for another place really. But the other thing that I'm thinking here, with this condition about how many can be occupied before or after the traffic calming measures are put in, if we are going to go ahead with the traffic calming measures and the timings of the developers finishing the property, if the work starts straight away for the traffic calming measures, would the chance of them being ready before any houses are occupied anyway? So we're kind of splitting a hair there, or am I getting this all wrong? Is this the timing of it? Could the traffic market, if we voted against it, are we voting against the fact that by the time the developers got one of these houses occupied, we could have had the traffic calming measures in anyway?
Yes, please do, Peter.
So in terms of the first part of your question, I think if you look at the comments online, it feels more, actually it's 50-50. Some residents do want some form of traffic calming, not necessarily this scheme, but they may want some form. Others don't want it. So I don't think it's necessarily correct to say simply all residents don't want any scheme at all. Yes, I appreciate that. Sorry, yeah. And in terms of it is and it isn't. I mean, ultimately, from a planning point of view, and the highways advice we've had from Wendy, and from right at the outset when the outline application was first being considered back in 2016, our highway service have always consistently said there needs to be some traffic calming here. So from a highway safety point of view, in inputting on the planning process, our view is there is a need for traffic calming.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Quigg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll try and be as brief as possible. Having digested what's been going back and forth, I've got to say this is the most cart and before horse application I think I've seen in a long time. I mean, some of the advice that's been given has been dire, and for me, if you're gonna do something like this, you should have had it right from the offset. And to say now after the fact is I just can't believe that something like this would be put forward. I can imagine what's been said about the consultation in terms of the fact it was one day and probably a couple of hours has got a letter, a leaflet, whatever you want to call it. But that isn't a consultation by any stretch of imagination, not one that the council would run anyway. And in terms of the cost, well, you know, that's the whole point of us having this decision. We have to make some tough choices, and the cost will be the cost, and that's the developer if he wants to appeal the application. But that's not really what we should be looking at. We should be looking at what's right for the residents, not what's right for the pockets of the developer, and whether he likes it or not. And he should have got this right from the start, from the get-go. And the fact is, his residents are just absolutely peeved off, and I can imagine why.
Thank you, Councillor Quigg. Councillor Williams.
Chair, I think, oh gosh, from what I heard, and we've had a motion put down that has been proposed and seconded, and I withdrew the bit about the TRO stuff. However, it still is part of that reasoning, and you said we couldn't do it, or the officer said. It is about consultation, and on top of that, it's about the parking issues. And so the planning inspectorate said there needed to be a scheme, but we've amended that scheme and we're doing it wrong. So why it can't be refused and then gone back and told the planning inspectorate we had to refuse it on this because it was wrong and we knew it was wrong and it wouldn't work for Oldham and it wouldn't work for Aven Lane or wherever, yeah, Aven Lane. So for me, we've had the proposal on the table. I would really like it, and I'm sure the residents here would really like it, if we took a vote on whether we accept this or we don't, and then we can move on.
So, sorry.
And I'm happy to speak if it goes to appeal.
So, just to clarify, you're proposing we reject. You're proposing a motion we reject the application, Councillor Wilson. If you could confirm, please. Do I get a seconder? Right. Sorry. All right. In that favour.
Sorry, just to come back again. I appreciate, and there is a motion and there is a seconder, but there is no reason for refusal been put forward yet. A planning reason for refusal. It's a parking issue. So the consultation isn't a valid reason that we can use for planning, but so the concerns around the parking issues that would be generated by the proposed scheme. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. I mean, I think we just need to be clear to some extent on that. That if we go back to the beginning of this, the applicant has a traffic calming scheme to be implemented. In terms of impact on on-street car parking, which I think is what you're referring to, councillor, that obviously will have some impact. The argument that's being put forward, which is that this scheme will impact on on-street parking, if that is indeed the message, again, is an issue the inspector specifically commented on in her report on that application. So if members were to refuse the application on the grounds that the implementation of this traffic calming scheme would have an serious adverse effect on parking, you need to have technical information, you need to have evidence to actually justify that, because we as officers won't be able to provide that. And that's where the difficulty comes with that, perhaps as a reason. Sorry, Chair.
Thank you, Martin. Councillor Williamson.
Just to come back on that. So you've told me that, but you've also told me that that the planning inspectorate put a scheme forward and you're amending it. So could I put a motion down that says that you don't amend it, and that would be accepted or not?
So what you're proposing is to refuse it. 'Cause that's the same thing. But what to clarify, the previous scheme was put forward by the previous landowner at the appeal. Without our support as a council, we did not agree to that scheme. The inspector imposed it via the condition, saying it has to be this drawing. As following on from that, as Wendy says, when we've gone into more detail, which is what we do after permission is granted on something like this, we found that scheme is not implementable without causing harm to other properties. So that's why the original scheme cannot be implemented. That doesn't change the fact that if you want to choose to refuse this scheme before you tonight, that as a committee, and for the reason you've given, that is your choice, and we've outlined the risks of that. But just to be clear, we can't simply go back to the previous scheme. It's not implementable.
Councillor Williamson.
I'm going to be blunt here. It feels like you're giving us advice, but the advice we are getting is that across the council, and that's how it feels to me as a member of the planning committee. We're trying to sort this out, and I'm not getting support from officers to say, well, or people are minded to refuse it. You've said that we could put this forward. So I'm still saying what I've said before, and we're going to be sat here all night if you carry on and you don't put it.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Just for me personally, I think the officers are giving professional advice, just as you would go to any other professional service, and they've got to be honest in that advice. And we, you know, you don't have to take that advice, but I'm sure we respect it nevertheless. Councillor Harkness.
Yeah, and it's a very difficult one, this. I mean, one thing, obviously, the key sort of concern has been around there's not been a consultation of this, which would take place as part of the traffic TR as well. No, but is that an option that we could sort of potentially defer this until some form of consultation on a highway scheme has taken place?
So I think just to answer that, obviously, as well as what the developer has done, notwithstanding the views on the quality of that, obviously this application has been subject to consultation. So we have received views, and so I think, you know, ultimately I respect the views that have been put forward tonight. It's never been a case of what you can't cross the council at all. That's not what we've done. We've advised you. The motion is before us. It is now for a vote ultimately on that.
Yes, thank you, Peter. I'm going to move to the vote. Okay, please. Yeah. Go on then. We'll take one last.
Thanks, Chair. No, I mean, we can refuse this on the grounds that the residents don't want this traffic calming scheme. I mean, that plateau, if we had it outside our house, next door's dog would be barking all night. We'd never have a minute's sleep. So it's things like that you've got to take into account. The people, imagine living next to that, banging all night, and especially with construction traffic. If someone's working night shifts, they're asleep, or, you know, who lives in the area, they've got to put up with trucks and stuff like that going over it when the development continues. We're here for the good of the people of Oldham. We shouldn't be people having to put up with this.
So just before Alan comes in on a final point on the vote, I think Councillor Davis, again, it comes back to the role of planning committee is to make planning decisions in line with planning policy and national guidance and national legislation. So it you know, it's a motion has been put forward with a reason for refusal around the impact on on-street parking. Notwithstanding my views on that, that is what's before us to vote on. As I said before, you cannot have a reason for refusal that is simply down to it needs more public consultation or the public don't like it. It's got to have a planning reason for refusal. So I think, you know, it's almost we've discussed this to death, I think, isn't it? And I think it's time to move to the vote.
Sorry. Go on.
Basically, I want to put it to the developer. Well, the applicant's in the room. He's heard the debate, and is he willing to pull the application, go back to the drawing board, and carry out a proper consultation with the local residents and come up with a scheme that the residents are happy with, and we can all move on. Obviously, this is the actual parking scheme could have been brought forward years ago. Why have they waited till so late in terms of the development? Because it was, I don't know, the initial application, I think, Peter, you mentioned it was approved in 2016. We're in 2024. And we could have agreed something that was more deliverable, etc., way before today.
If I may, Chair, I mean, yes, I appreciate the offer, but ultimately, in terms of the process we have to go through, there is a decision before the committee tonight that it can't be withdrawn on the spot by the agent of the applicant. It's the agent here, not the applicant.
I appreciate the council's good intention.
I do.
Can I go over to Alan before we go to a vote, please?
Yes, Chair. Just to remind members, if you are going to refuse the application against the officer recommendation, you do need valid planning reasons to do so. And as Peter said, in the event of an appeal, you will need to provide evidence to substantiate that reason for refusal. Otherwise, there's a risk that the council can have costs awarded against it.
So we're going to move to the vote. All in favour of rejection, raise your hands. Councillor, you can't vote on this one due to leaving the room. So when we got there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All them against? Against the refusal, yeah. 4, 5. Any abstentions? 1. The application is rejected. Thank you. Wow, is it like this every time? I'd like to propose a short break if anyone needs to take advantage of that for 5 minutes, and then we'll reconvene.
because I'm conscious there are a lot of people here who are interested in those two applications who probably don't want to be sat here for a few more hours while we go through the other ones.
I concur with that. I would be happy to do that, yes. Okay, it's application number 9 on the agenda.
Most of our presentation now.
Yeah. And who's presenting this?
Sophie.
Sophie.
And then we'll move on to the, I think it's some of the tree ones with the one.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I'm going to hand over to Sophie.
Thanks, Chair. This application is for one new dwelling, and it's been referred to Planning Committee as there has been a significant public interest in the application. It's recommended that the application be approved subject to the conditions set out in the report. And members' attention is also drawn to the late list. There's one additional representation being received since the publication of the report. The site relates to a parcel of land located on Stockport Road within the village of Lidgate. The site is within the village itself, however it's not sited within the conservation area, and it's also not sited within the green belt. These are the photos from the front of the site, so it's directly adjacent to number 4. You can see where the dry stone walls come down at the front. This is the parcel of land where the property relates. This is a side view with an outlook across the car park of the White Hart Public House. The property is for a 4-bedroomed, 6-person dwelling, and you can see from the floor plans it's a fairly standard layout, typical for a two-storey property. These are the proposed elevations with proposed materials. This is the proposed site plan that shows the parking and private garden area. The orange line indicates the greenbelt boundary, and you can see from the site plan that the development is now completely outside of the greenbelt. And I just want to mention that the parish council have objected to the application, and the other consultations were acceptable subject to various conditions. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Sophie. Do we have any questions for the officer, Councillor Hartness?
Yes, so I'm just looking at obviously the parish council's objections and the reference to the inspectorate who said that the entire site was inappropriate for development, and also the parish council appears to be of the view that it is within the green belt and seem to have a different view. So I know we got sort of quite clear on whether the actual boundary is for the green belt, and also why we are recommending approval for an application where the planning inspector had stated the entire site was inappropriate.
Peter?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So first of all, in terms of the greenbelt boundary, I pointed to what's on the screen in terms of the orange line towards the bottom of the plan there is marking the greenbelt boundary. Obviously that drawing's been done by the applicant. We have double checked it and it is correct in terms of where the greenbelt boundary is, and that the whole of the application site is outside of the greenbelt. In terms of the reference to what the appeal inspector said, obviously that was in relation to an appeal for 3 dwellings on a wider site covering the whole gap between number 4 and St Anne's Church. And so that was why, in that context, the inspector was saying the whole of this site is not appropriate for development. But obviously, in terms of what the application is before us now, it's for a much smaller site. It is not in the green belt, and therefore the principle of allowing residential development on a site that has no designation in the local plan is acceptable.
Would you like to come back, Councillor?
Yes, so I just had a look, and so there's 3 on the portal. It says there's 3 separate sort of applications relevant. Now, 2 of them, the one was dismissed at appeal was for 3 dwellings, you said, and obviously the one in 2022, which was for 3 dwellings, which the council and this committee refused as well. And then, but I know you said, well, that was for 3 and this is for 1. But then in 2020, there was an application for erection of 1 dwelling, and that was also refused as well. So I suppose, that would just be my response to that.
Peter?
So for this application, obviously all we're looking at is the red boundary on that plan, not the blue. That just denotes that the applicant also owns that land. Whereas for the most recent application for 1 dwelling that was refused, the red line boundary included the whole of that land ownership, and that's why we couldn't approve that scheme, because it was showing effectively that greenbelt land as curtilage to the residential dwelling. But this isn't.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Any more? Councillor Williamson?
Thank you. Did you say the appeals inspector? Did you say about the area?
So Councillor Hartness raised that the appeal inspector said about the site, about the development of 3 dwellings on the whole of that area, that was not an appropriate site for development. But obviously, the inspector wasn't saying that the whole of the site was greenbelt. He was saying that whole site was not appropriate to have as a single development. What's before us now is for 1 part of the site that is not in the green belt, and as we're saying, in terms of the way the local plan is worded and what have you, the principle of having residential development on that non-green belt parcel of land is acceptable.
Can you just enlarge that map, because I can't see the colours.
Not really.
Right.
I'll show you with the thing. So the red line boundary is this.
All right.
That's the application site. The blue boundary is the rest of the ownership, but is not part of this application. Whereas at the appeal and in all previous applications, the whole of this was the red line boundary, and that's why it was not acceptable.
Right. Okay.
Councillor Cosgrove?
It's just a query, have you got a satellite picture of it? And can we know where the green belt finishes and where it starts?
No.
No. So on that map there, where is the line for the green belt?
So effectively, the green belt boundary is very similar to the southern part of the red line boundary. So if we move forward, no, wrong way, a couple of slides, in terms of it's shown better on this screen. So that orange line is the green belt boundary. So I'm not doing it very straight because I'm using my left hand.
So it's on the edge of the development site?
Yes. It's just to the south of it.
The other pictures that showed a bigger view of the area, can we have a look?
So that's what I'm saying, that
there's a picture of an house somewhere.
Oh, I see, in the actual pictures.
There.
I
So
don't
we're
think you can.
talking like so many metres this way from there. So what's on this side?
Potentially about
Field.
this point here.
Yeah, is it visible through the picture?
No, it's fine. It's fine, councillor.
You can't quite see it. You can't quite see it from these pictures, but effectively, yes. The on the ground, it's all one field.
Right.
There has, yeah, but part of it isn't greenbelt. There has been some work on the non-greenbelt part in terms of some digging out of the land and what have you, but ostensibly in terms of what was previously there, it's all one field. But the greenbelt boundary bisected that field.
Councillor Hoban.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether it's how it's worded, but how different people are going to read it. But I read it as the planning inspector. It was refused because the entire site was unsuitable for development. I'm taking that as the entire site is unsuitable for development. And I'm not saying you're reading it in a different way on purpose, but that's how I'm reading it. So, is that if they'd have come back and said there's part of it that's okay, and part of it isn't, but the planning inspector says on the form the entire site is unsuitable for development. For me, that means that entire site that the landowner has is unsuitable for development.
Peter.
I don't have the inspector's report in front of me to be able to read it in detail now and come back in detail on that. The bottom line is, while those previous decisions, as we've talked about in the training and what have you, are material considerations, we still have to take this application in isolation and on its own merits. And the reality is, say, because of where the greenbelt boundary is, this parcel of land is not in the greenbelt, and therefore, from a policy point of view, the principle of housing is acceptable. And obviously, you can take a different view for because of what the inspector has said. That's why that whole weighing exercise of material considerations versus the development plan. But based upon what the development plan says, this site is in principle acceptable for development.
Would you like to add, Councillor Hoban?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Because for me, on this, in black and white in front of me, it says the entire site is unsuitable for development. So I'm reading that as though that entire site is unsuitable for development, and if we were to refuse it, it's in black and white for me, the reason we refuse it, because the planning inspectorate has said the entire site is unsuitable.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other? Councillor Davis?
I thought I'd give you a bit of a break from me, but Councillor Oben there, just leading on from his question. The question is, do we know why it was refused? Why the land wasn't or the area wasn't acceptable? Do we know why? Because that'd help out, wouldn't it? Or should we defer this one?
Peter.
So, my understanding in terms of the inspectors. Sorry, that's why I don't want to speak over you. My understanding of the inspector's decision was that taking the entire site and the entire development of 3 dwellings on that land, because the vast majority of that parcel is greenbelt, it's inappropriate development in the greenbelt, and that was the fundamental reason for the refusal, and from our refusal, and the ultimate reason why the inspector dismissed the appeal and agreed with us in terms of that 3 dwelling scheme. Like I say, this is now a fundamentally different scheme because it's not involving any greenbelt land.
Thank you, Peter.
So just to come back on that then, so do you think it was we're just playing around? I don't mean you mean this in a funny way, but do you think that we as though we're kind of playing with words and it was just the way he expressed himself on the day? Do you think that, all the time? Do you think that's what it was then?
I think that I'm not going to suggest any of us are doing anything in particular. I think it's just more, I can see how you interpret the words. Obviously, from a planning point of view, understanding the situation with the development plan and what have you, and the wider picture of that appeal, which was fundamentally it's about the green belt. Given this application site does not involve the green belt, we've made our recommendation to approve.
Councillor Williamson.
Sorry, Diane.
So, bit like Councillor Hoban. I'm reading this, and to me, it sounds like we're going against, again, what the planning inspector has said. So it's about also one of the ways to refuse it is because of the it says on here detracts from the iconic skyline from the church. I mean, that is for me a reason for refusal, and the traffic calming measures, as they say in here, it just doesn't. It's unsuitable for development. So if he's saying it's unsuitable for that big piece of land, then my mind reads it as, well, that little piece of land, that's unsuitable for development as well. So I go down the same route as, I'll say, my two colleagues who've just spoken, really.
Another consensus. That's 2 today. Do we have any other members' input before we... Yes.
Thank you, Chair. It was just that about the traffic calming issues. I noticed that there has been representation concerning highway safety. Could you just clarify that a bit more for us, Chair? Thank you.
Yes, Wendy. Thank you.
So we do, when we get a planning application submitted, various drawings are submitted. I can look at the drawings, things like the visibility display, which was commented on by the person making the late representation. It doesn't mean that that drawing is correct, which is what the person making the representation said. So I've been out to site and I checked the visibility, and it's absolutely fine and acceptable. So he was right in saying, actually, this visibility drawing isn't correct. It wasn't. But I went out and checked, and I'm happy that there is adequate visibility.
Thank you, Wendy. At this point, I'd like to bring forward the objector, Jennifer Greenwood. Hi, Jennifer. How are you today? Okay, we'll just take your time and prepare yourself. Of course you can. It's 3 minutes, but only from when the first word comes out your mouth.
Can I just ask something first, please? Yeah. Well, it's that I sent some photographs in, and I didn't get confirmation that they'd arrived. I did send again to say had they. I mean, they're not like your flash things up here, but they're here.
Sorry, Peter, if you could clarify the process.
We'll have to check whether we did receive them, because at the moment I haven't got a record of whether we did, but unfortunately we can't accept documents at the committee in that way in terms of now. But
the lovely photographs.
It's a lovely place.
Shall I start now?
You can, Jennifer, yeah.
I'm a member, Lidgate, and chair of Lidgate, our local community group. I'm also representing the White Hart. We're extremely surprised that after 3 previous applications being found unacceptable to the planning department and a dismissed appeal to the planning inspectorate, the local authority now found in favour of this last application, which differs very little from what has gone before. The first application was made in 2020 for one house. Since then, there have been 3 further applications. The grounds for a refusal on each application have been consistent. In December 2022, after the applicant lodged an appeal, the planning inspector appointed by the Secretary of State was even more robust. Supported by much evidence, she came to the same conclusion about the negative impact of any building on this site, it being in the Greenbelt. There is much stress on this final application being outside the green belt. Really? There is talk of red lines and blue lines, but where are the measurements? Where are the calculations? Where is the evidence and the definite plan of Greenbelt? The house itself is still taller than number 4, which it's squeezed up against. Apparently, it's been lowered by 10 inches, 25 centimetres, which makes no difference at all. Nothing has been shaved off the footprint of the building, just a narrow strip of grass. Look at the Greenbelt policy again, and instead of looking down with your tape measure, look up. This building will still be violating the principles of the policy, the purpose of which is to prevent urban sprawl and preserve the openness both spatially and visually. How close we are, you can't see it, but we're very close to the built-up area. Lidgate is a tiny hamlet with a visual openness that can be viewed from every aspect. This bluff can be seen at least 2 or 3 miles away as you come out of Oldham, and from it you can see Oldham, Manchester, and even the hills of Wales. Just one house would harm views of buildings that are so special that they've been given Grade 2 listed status. The church could not be shown as viewed
30 seconds.
As you approach it from the crossroads, as it can be now, or the lovely old profile of the White Hart as you come up Groton Brew. These views would be lost forever. This development would set a precedent. In your wards, you will have places that give your towns and villages their special character. Places and areas that make you proud of where you live. And you need to think about the impact on those. We have a strong sense of responsibility to our village and its surroundings. We are custodians of it and we want to protect it from harmful development. Our heritage should be celebrated and conserved. And we thought Oldham were agreeing...
Apologies, Jennifer, I've given you a few more seconds, but you've gone over your time.
Okay, I'll just say one house will not do anything to ease this housing crisis. This land was never earmarked for development. It's protected by the appeal decision, and you have the power to do the right thing and say no to this development.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Sorry.
I'd like to ask members if they have any questions for Jennifer. Can we start with Councillor Harkness, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Jennifer, so you mentioned about the height and the issue. You talked to us a bit about the impact that would have, and also you mentioned the listed building. So would it be able to tell us like roughly how near that listed building is to this application?
Well, there are 2 listed buildings.
Sorry, two listed buildings.
They're opposite each other. And the important thing from if this house goes ahead is that one of the things that is so fantastic about the listed building, which is St Anne's Church, is that as you approach it, you can in the village you can see that quite clearly. Quite clearly. With this house, you can't, and I've got it. I can show you in the photograph here. You would not be able to see it. And the height of the building, it was said. There was some controversy from planning to say that it was too high because it was higher than the one next to it. And so they reduced it by 10 inches. It's still higher than the one next to it. Don't make any difference.
Any other members? Councillor Quigg.
Jennifer, you mentioned you were here on behalf of the White Hart as well. Can you explain how busy this particular section is in terms of traffic and at particular peak times? Is there a height at peak, and if someone say was trying to reverse or drive out of that particular property, would there be an issue there along this road in terms of the traffic?
It's a busy road, it's an A road, it's a narrow road. The pavements are very narrow because it's a very old village. And one thing that really concerns us is that the car parking spaces are right opposite from this house, are right opposite where the rumble strips are. There are parked cars on the other side, and it would mean they would be reversing out into the place where the rumble strips are, where there's already static traffic or, you know, dangerous crossings.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. How do you feel that the approval of the development would, I suppose, negatively impact the whole community? What would it do to that? Because not that it's a material consideration, but even so, I know stuff like this has a real negative impact on a lot of people, and I just wondered whether that you're part of a community group, aren't you? You said, yeah.
I am,
so
I'm the chair, yeah.
Yeah, so I just wondered about that aspect of it, really.
It would have a very negative impact. We're a very can-do village. I think we're the sort of village that the council wants, because we crack on and get things done ourselves. Sometimes we have to ask you for help, like we are doing now. But I use the word in there, custodians. We feel we're custodians. We care about what went in the past. We care about what we're leaving for the future. And we would feel we'd failed those people that come after us. And, well, I would personally be devastated, and you could hear the applause from there. Those people would feel the same.
Councillor Hurley.
Just come back quickly. I've just heard something. My spies tell me. Is that land something to do with the suffragette?
It is. Well, it was before the suffragettes. It was when it was Peterloo, and they had a vote for women the first time, and it's been recorded in you know, it's recorded, it's kosher. And in fact, you guys put the stone together. It's going to be a memorial stone, and we're so proud of it. And it was in that field.
Right. Thank you.
Councillor Hurley.
Jennifer, I was really moved, especially when you were talking about the historical that Diane's just been talking about as well. But can you tell me, I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with such a beautiful area that for the third time we're back here talking about just decimating the whole area again. Can you tell me, as a member of the community, this very, very close, lovely community that's come along to support you tonight, where would you go from here if this was granted? What would happen now?
Well, I know we would be devastated, but as I said, we're can-do people. And I don't know. I mean, we in the village there is our community hub, and it was falling apart. And we got together and we formed a charity, and we've saved that building. And I think that spirit is still there in this village. And if you took this away, we're not going to give up. We'd think of some way of saving it, I think. Don't know how, but we'd try.
Thank you, Councillor Hurley. Do we have any other members? Councillor?
Hi, Jennifer, over here.
Sorry. Oh, sorry.
Hi.
I'm sorry.
You mentioned a few things. The height of the building, we should reduce it by 10 inches. If they reduced it further, would that make a difference? And secondly, you highlight that you wasn't aware where the green space was. On the picture, it clearly shows that is outside the boundary of the house. So clearly the development is not actually on green space itself.
Well, I don't work in the planning department, but I'm a practical person. And if I was putting a carpet in my kitchen or something like that, I'd want to know the measurements of that space. There are no measurements on there. It's a line, but how is that line decided upon? And to be honest, you know, say about the height of the building, but even if it was lowered, it was planning that wanted it lowered. We don't want it there at all. But if it was lowered even further, it would still impact negatively on that space. This is iconic. Once it's gone, it's gone.
Thank you.
Chair.
Yes, Councillor Nassim.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think what you've just said was quite moving, and also just something that you said that quite, you know, is nitpicking at me, is if that building was erected, whether the height is reduced or not. You said that that would considerably reduce the viewing of the grade listed buildings. Could you just emphasise a little bit more on that? I mean, is it the church? Is it the church building? Have we got any pictures up there that we can see, if you don't mind, Peter? Or?
I've not got any further pictures, but the church is here, where the cursor is, and the White Hart's over here, and this is the car park.
And the building is going, and the building is up, right, okay. Okay, so coming traffic coming from that side, okay.
But you can clearly see there that the church is set back way beyond this line where the house is, and you just wouldn't see it at all. And equally, when you're coming up what we call Groton Brew, you'd have to know the area, but when you're coming up, you can see the church quite clearly. You can see the White Hart. You can see that ridge. I used to say, I'll probably not make myself very popular here, but I used to say, we look down on Oldham and we look down on Saddleworth. But, you know, shouldn't say that. But that's what it is. It's this iconic ridge. And the buildings are in profile. And you can see in every direction. It's fantastic.
Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Chair. Is there any development whatsoever that would be acceptable to yourself and the group on this plot?
No.
Any further points? Thank you for your motive speech, Jennifer. It was very, very moving.
Thank you very much.
I'd now like to invite Councillor Bishop to the chair to speak on behalf of residents. Thank you. 5 minutes, I believe, is the apportioned time.
Sorry, can I just ask, when we did training then we were told there was no fixed time on ward councillors. That was your mistake. We were told, I was told that earlier on today as well now. Well, I'm not sure this will fit into exactly 5 minutes, but there were 2 ward councillors speaking before.
Well, when I say 5 minutes, I'll give you between 5 and 6.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, well, sorry. I'll make this quite easy for you because I've brought some of the answers that you've been asking for. So I'm going to start this. I was going to end by with this quote as well. This is from the appeal report. Fortunately, I have brought extracts from it. And this is what Her Majesty's Planning Inspector, who is employed by the Secretary of State and supersedes this council, the authority of this council. So Francis Cullen said, the introduction of residential development on the site would result in the incremental erosion of an open space within the village, detracting from the historic, punctuated, organic pattern of development in the area and eroding the spacious qualities of the Lidgate Conservation Area. Now, what she doesn't say is, apart from that bit at the end, that'd be okay. She doesn't say that. If you want a material matter, it's there. It's that simple. And that in itself would mitigate against any costs if it went to appeal, because we just refer back to the initial decision. Now, whilst I said, well, that was for 3, it doesn't matter. She says, on the site. That was the larger site, and it was the full site. And that says, any introduction, the introduction of residential development on the site. And really, that's end of conversation. But because I have a few more minutes, I'll carry on. So, I'll read you a little bit more from the appeal report. This tranquil space allows the church to be experienced and contributes considerably to its significance. Beyond this space, the organic and sporadic pattern of development within historic Lidgate, as well as the impressive topography and undeveloped nature of the surrounding landscape, that's part of the surrounding landscape, including the appeal site, gives the building a prominence along with a generally expansive context which permits short, medium and long-range views of the church and its tower. In these respects, the church's wider setting contributes in a meaningful and positive way to its significance. It then goes on to mention the White Hart. I'm trimming this down because of the time, but I've got all this information here, and I am 100% confident that we can defend this at appeal without incurring any costs. And I know this because I've just been through 2 successful appeals, one for this site and one for another site in Greenfield. So I'm absolutely confident that, but the thing is, this isn't even about the green belt. We have no measurements for that green belt. We have a clumsy map. Where are the measurements? Nobody has been yet able to tell me how many metres, centimetres, etc. from the boundary of number 4 that green belt lies. And that for me is not good enough to make a decision on that is going to have a catastrophic effect. In terms of the views, and the impact on the listed buildings that you were talking about, there are several, and I've brought a mug here that's got the scene on. And if I can show you now, in the centre of this scene, this is from Lidgate Crossroads on the other side of the road. The church is central here. This is the house at number 4. It will completely block the church. If anything is built next to number 4, it will completely block the view of the church in the conservation area. It will block it from Oldham Road, and it will block it from the beginning of Stockport Road as well. It won't. It's the White Hart that will be blocked from when you're rising up Oldham Road. So there are other material matters on top of this, but I think those are the fundamental ones. And we've mentioned the fact that this is a heritage site as well. It is, believe it or not, you know, within this borough, we potentially have the site, the birth of women's suffragism and of women having the vote. Now, wouldn't it be nice for us to preserve that and for us to be able to celebrate that and have something really positive about this borough and something that we can sell this borough and build on? Because this borough does have a place in history. It has a place of you know, of struggle and of new ideas and of progress, and that's what we want to retain and that's what we want to build on. So I'll just read a couple more bits from the appeal.
30 seconds.
Relevant to the appeal, the White Hart's significance also stems in part from its setting. Similar to the church, the White Hart's wider setting, including neighbouring historic buildings and sloping pastoral fields, of which this appeal site forms part, impart a landmark status to the building and a rural quality to its surroundings, which are intricately linked to the building's historic uses. The White Hart's presence in a variety of views from a number of public vantage points in the area serves to strengthen the analysis that the building's wider setting contributes in a positive way to its significance. The proposal will result in the introduction of permanent built form within the asset's wider settings, which has remained undeveloped throughout the period evidenced in the submitted historic maps. This would notably erode and adversely undermine the physically and visually open qualities of the site, detrimentally altering a key characteristic of the asset settings, and in doing so negatively affect the ability to appreciate their significance. That's from the planning inspector.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. I've just got one question from myself. In your opinion, does number 4 block the view and have the same detrimental impact that this new... No. And could you reason that?
Could you put the photograph up? Yeah, okay. So, this is number 4 here. Now, this was built as a police station. So because it was a public building, this was many, many, many decades ago, this was a public building, and therefore it met exceptional circumstances.
Sorry, that's not the question I asked.
Yes, can I just...
Yes.
I'm going to come to the question.
Thank you.
Okay, so as you can see there, it blocks the view of some of the other houses. This here is Greenbelt. Now, a house here is going to block part of the Greenbelt. It's also going to block it from various other, and it will impact on the openness, regardless of the argument about whether it is or isn't. It will impact on the openness of the Greenbelt. So that is what I would say. No, a previous building is not. We are discussing the building that's going to go up and whether it's going to block the Greenbelt, and the answer is yes.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Do we have any, Councillor Harness?
Yeah, so you mentioned, Ellen, about the planning inspector mentioned about the topography and stuff, and obviously, you know, I know the area quite well, you know it better than me, you know, it's not all flat and what I mean, so could you talk a little bit more about how that would, you know, affect it, you know?
So the building proposed is already is taller in height than the building at number 4, but the road as you go up it from past number 4 and up towards the conservation area, the road is sloped. So as well as being taller anyway, it is going to really dominate over the house at number 4, and really impact even further on that view.
Thank you, Councillor Hartness. Do we have a Councillor Cosgrove?
It's just a quick one, because in my area we've got Greenbelt, and we had a previous development, and we was told by the planning inspector that if we build right up to the Greenbelt, we'll lose a buffer zone.
There you go.
So I'm just wondering, would that, in planning terms, come into this situation
So,
as well?
In those terms, so this application, this building here, is the footprint of this building is absolutely no different to the last one that was refused. The only thing that is different is that a slither of wild grass has been removed from the side. I'm not kidding. A little slither of what they called a grass buffer or something has been removed from the side. So, and that was the part that they said, you know, this sort of like unofficial Greenbelt boundary line that we can't seem to determine, that strayed over into the Greenbelt. How grass strays into the Greenbelt, I'm still unsure, but it did. And that has been removed. But the building is exactly the same, and there was still concerns then about its impact on the conservation area. So I'm still unsure as to what has remained. Sorry, did I answer your question there? Because but yeah, what could happen then is that once this has been built, because they wanted more houses, bigger houses, and what could happen then is there's an extension on it, and that is going into the Greenbelt. And before you know it, that entire field will be covered in housing. And we're trying to protect, you know, some of the remaining heritage spots that we have left. We have, you know, a tourism industry that we need to keep. We need these sorts of places in the borough, and we need to protect them.
Thank you. Any more members' questions for Councillor Bishop? Councillor Hurley.
Thank you, Helen. Can you tell me a little bit more? You've told us about the historical value, and I absolutely heard you. But I think it was Jennifer mentioned a blue plaque that this authority put there.
Yeah.
So if we've recognised as a borough that this is an important part of our heritage, why are we sat in this room? Why are we sat as members having this discussion when we've already recognised this as a real historical value to this town?
I don't know.
Thank you. I think the reason we're sat here is to discuss the merits of the planning application as per...
but it all has bearing on it.
No, I accept that, but we're here for a reason, is what my point is. Do we have any other members' questions for Councillor Bishop? No. Thank you for your time, Councillor Bishop. Oh, sorry. What? Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we anticipate what Councillor Woodvine is going to come with. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Woodvine. I'm just going to bring Peter in just before we go to the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, a lot of things have been discussed in those over the course of those two speakers and the questions you members, committee members have been asking. A number of things of clarifications that have been sought and what have you. So I felt it's appropriate to answer some of those. So first of all, in terms of the green belt and its measurements and that kind of thing. So first of all, we have measured it. I mean, I clarify first of all, it is not an unofficial greenbelt boundary. It is the greenbelt boundary. That is set in the local plan, and it is what it is. We cannot change that except through a new local plan. So the boundary is official. It is there. It's clearly visible on our policies map on the website. So we've measured it, and in terms of the, if I go back to this screen first of all. So in terms of the red line boundary, we measured, so from the green, I'll go to this screen. Where's it gone? No, wrong one. So we measured on our plan, the policies map, where the orange boundary is shown here, which is marked as the green belt. We measured the green belt boundary on our official plan. So at the front of the site, fronting Stockport Road, it is 8.5 metres wide there. At the back of the site, obviously the opposite western end, it is 9.6 metres wide. We then measured the development proposal and the space that took up, and at the front it is 8.3 metres wide, and at the rear it is 9 metres wide. So categorically, to set that very clearly, this application site is not in the Greenbelt, okay? There's no unofficial or vagueness about that. Categorically, they've measured it. It's not in the Greenbelt.
Councillor Woodvine?
Sorry, a few points.
Sorry.
So there's a few points I wanted to come back on and just clarify. So again, showing this plan here in terms of the alignment of the house, it's really clear from that plan, because bear in mind the developer has to develop to this plan if it's approved. The front of the house is in line with number 4. It's not further forward from it, it's not further back from it, it's in line with number 4. So it is being consistent in terms of the built frontage that's already there in place. In terms of the height of the house, I recognise the concerns around that, but obviously the Stockport Road is rising as you go south. So it is natural and in line with the places for everyone policy that guides this kind of thing in development. It is natural for the height of the roof, the overall height of the house, to end up being higher than the one further down the hill. In terms of the heritage setting and a number of things that have been raised around that, a blue plaque is not a planning designation. It is simply a plaque to recognise a person or an event happened in that place. So while I appreciate the value of that, it isn't a planning designation. And in terms of the heritage setting, again, it's being designed in a way that is trying to be in keeping with what it is next to. It is not necessarily blocking the wider view of heritage assets, and that's been assessed in the committee report. Finally, just two more things. Sorry, in terms of the concern about this leading to further development, again, categorically that is not appropriate. One, we can't judge an application now on what might come in the future. We have to only consider the application before us. Two, an extension into the Greenbelt wouldn't automatically be granted. In fact, it's unlikely to be granted for that very reason, because it would be extending into the Greenbelt. So we can only assess what's before us, and there is no, in any way, certainty that it would be extended in the future. And then finally, on the appeal decision, because I have pulled it up while we've been talking and what have you. If I can go back to Councillor Hoban, if that's all right, Chair, just in terms of the quote you gave earlier, do you happen to have a paragraph number from the inspector's report?
No, I'm going off the agenda item.
Okay. Okay, I'll come back to that then.
Councillor Woodvine.
Thank you. I want to start by saying that the context of this application is that the planning inspectorate said that this site in its entirety is not suitable for development. Therefore, I think we are well within our rights to refuse this. I am surprised to see that this is before us tonight, because we have, as an authority, refused these plans 3 times before. It's clear that there are strong concerns around this application from the village community. These concerns are solid material grounds for refusal. Previous applications for one property have been refused have been refused in the past, so I don't see why we would approve it now. Those reasons for refusal still apply. There is a clear loss of amenity. The Greenbelt boundaries are not clear, frankly. However, this application will have an adverse effect on the openness of Greenbelt. The planning inspector said that this site should all be considered as Greenbelt. The council recently celebrated this site as the start of the suffrage movement. I'm surprised we are now planning to concrete over it. It has historical significance, and this development will also have a negative effect on the village's Grade 2 listed Church of St Anne and the Grade 2 listed pub, which, for those of you who don't know, during the Second World War was a lookout for during the Blitz. So I think that sort of justifies its vantage point. And it would also have a negative effect on the village conservation area. This proposal is out of character with the historical setting, scenery and skyline. Oldham has supposedly met its housing supply, so this won't contribute to that target either. I do also have concerns that this will set a precedent and unlock the site for future developments, and I could go into highway safety, but all I will say is that this very week there was a road traffic accident close to the site, and this plan would exacerbate the existing problems in terms of the village's highway network. So I don't see any reason to approve this application, and I would propose that we refuse it tonight. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Sorry, we've got a few people who've intimated they wish to speak beforehand. Councillor Holbin.
I'll keep it brief because I think Max has touched on everything. While we was, after listening to Jennifer and listening to Helen, I was looking on Google Maps on my phone and just looking, getting a better view of this. And I'm sure even those poor people down in Failsworth will know that area quite well. And it does stand out as a really, really prominent place that we should be keeping that massive view right across. Absolutely unbelievable. And I just think, I think we need to, for once maybe, since I've been on the planning committee, we need to put the residents first and all their objections. And I think rather than put them through any more misery, I think we'll go with what Sam said and let's get this vote done.
Thank you, Councillor Holbin. I'm just going to take three more. First of all, Councillor Quigg.
I'll be brief, Mr. Chairman. I think what the planning inspector and what the council are saying are two very different things. And I think that is a major concern of mine, which keeps cropping up and it keeps cropping up. And with all the best will in the world, you know, as a ward councillor myself, I've certainly come across measurements being completely banged out from developers in the past, and this council are saying my hands are tied very much afterwards. So I think the fact that these measurements and the definition of this area is completely out is a major concern. And I also think that this road in particular, as I asked the question about traffic, I mean, the pictures that you've used in this slide are incredibly deceptive. You've taken them from one side and not the other. And the view that they're talking about, which I think Councillor Bishop tried the best to intimate from a mug, is essentially it's the angle coming up from the other side as if you're coming into Lidgate, where you can see the church, and if that house is potentially allowed to be built, then essentially that's where that completely gets cut off. So, you know, as much as in my own ward, if someone tried to build, you know, border my ward, shall I say, Diane, if the Puckersley was being done in the same way, I wouldn't be too happy, and I don't think people in Lidgate would want that for where they are.
Peter, would you like to come as a professional right of reply?
Yeah, I think there's a few things here. I mean, first of all, Councillor Quigg, if you think there are discrepancies between what the council is recommending and what the inspector's report, please set it out in writing to me and point me to the inspector's report's paragraphs, because I'm looking at it right now, and while there is a clear objection to the development in the green belt of three dwellings.
So there's various witnesses who've come up with this. So best will in the world.
Let me finish, Councillor Quigg. I'm speaking.
Please continue, Peter.
There is clear responses and reviews in the inspector's report to...
Sorry, just little. We're not in the classroom now, Mr. Quigg. Councillor Quigg.
There was three...
I'm referring to your underhanded comment. Sorry, Peter, if you'd like to continue.
So long and short, I would appreciate that clarification in writing, Councillor Quigg, to point out to me where the inspector's report says one thing about a one dwelling scheme not in the green belt, as opposed to a three dwelling scheme that is in the green belt. Because when I read the inspector's report, the overriding thing that comes through is that it is about inappropriate development in the green belt. Factually, I've already explained, this site is not in the green belt. The development proposed, we've measured it, is not in the green belt. It's been said, I think it was Councillor Woodvine said just before that the inspector said that all of the sites should be in the green belt. Again, I can't find that in the inspector's report. Okay, thank you very much, because I'd be very surprised to see an inspector say that the green belt boundary should be changed outside of a local plan.
Thank you, Peter.
So I think we just need to be really clear that we're dealing with facts. I understand the emotiveness. I understand there are issues. I am not getting away from the fact that you might have counter views to me on aspects like heritage or the impact and that kind of thing. But we have to deal with facts and not fake news.
Thank you for that, Peter. The last point I'd like to take, Councillor.
Thank you,
Oh,
Chair.
you did, sorry.
Peter, this one's for yourself. You know, what they're referring to is number 7 here, yeah? Point number 7, when planning inspector was refused on the grounds that the entire site was unsuitable.
Seven of what?
Yeah.
Of our report or the inspector's report?
Our report here. I think they keep on referring back to that for refusal. I just want some clarity on that.
So, let's be clear. Point 7 is a summary of the consultation responses we've received on the application. Summary of what has been put in by members of the public and other objectors. It is not our views, it is not the inspector's views, it's an interpretation of that. So again, let's be clear on that. The inspector and officers, none of us have said the whole site is inappropriate.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just some of the questions I was going to raise, but the last question I was worried about the line of the green belt. You've clearly clarified that's the exact line, not an estimate. You've clarified the part regarding the highways as well, and also the height of the house, which actually is going up a hill, so automatically it will be higher, even though they've reached about 10 inches. The front of the house is level with the other house. Now that this is not the officer's report, it was being quoted over and over again for some of my colleagues. So that's clarified. This is not the when one officers made these comments. These are from the general public, which has come here. So that's all I want to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And finally, Councillor Harkness.
Yeah, okay. So Max started off, and I think was looking at proposing refusal on that. In terms of to look at that, I feel that there's possibly 4 key grounds we could recommend refusal on. So previously, on previous applications, the height of the properties have been regarded as one of the reasons. So I would say that the impact, the visual impact and the design topography would have a negative impact on the area. So I think it's been demonstrated with the church and a lot of things around the negative impact on the conservation area. I do feel that if this goes to appeal, as a council, we could defend this. However, we could still end up with costs if we put the greenbelt issue in there, because I think it's been suggested that it's outside that. But we could say that it's going to have a negative impact due to its proximity on the greenbelt and the impact on the open space. And then finally, I think through previous applications and the planning inspectorate, it would be said that previous planning applications and appeals had set a precedent on the site as well. Because I think it's, I'm still of that view that, yes, all right, the planning inspector says that site is not suitable for development. Well, it does include that bit, in my view, as well as the other bit. And I know, obviously, the greenbelt bit is, but that bit was part of what was discussed. So those would be the 4 grounds, and I would support Councillor Woodvine's refusal request.
Thank you, Councillor Harkness. I believe we have a motion tabled to reject the application from Councillor Williamson. Do we have somebody who would second that? Sorry. Sorry, Councillor Woodvine. For the record, Councillor Woodvine is submitting the motion and Councillor Williams is the seconder. So, sorry? Oh, sorry. Okay, that's fine. Have you finished? Can we bat on? Thank you. Okay, so then all in favour... Sorry, I'm...
So,
yeah, so Peter, if you want to come in.
So first of all, just need to clarify, obviously, Councillor Woodvine, you've made a motion. Councillor Hartness has suggested some reasons for refusal. You agree with them all? Okay, so on those, you know, again, I'm here to give you the advice. In terms of the visual impact consideration, the impact on the conservation area and the previous appeal decisions, they are, well, so the first two are subjective, so I'm comfortable if you wanted to make them reasons for refusal, in terms of that they should be defendable in some way or other, at least without costs. Previous appeal of President, again, that comes into it, so again, I can accept that. I would recommend that you don't include a reason for refusal linked to the Greenbelt, because as we've said, it has nothing to do with the Greenbelt, this site.
Thank you, Peter. Alan, do you need to come in?
Yes, Chair, just to repeat what I said earlier, if you are going to refuse it against officer recommendations, you need to do so for valid planning reasons, as Peter's just outlined. In the event of an appeal, you will be required to provide evidence to support those reasons for refusal, or otherwise you run the risk of costs being awarded against the council.
Could I just ask, before we go to the vote, who would be prepared to volunteer? Councillor Woodvine, yes? Can we note that, please? Okay, so the vote is all in favour of rejection, raise your hands. I think that's unanimous, I would say. Yeah? So the application is rejected. Thank you. Item 11. Okay, we're now going to move on to item 11. We're now on to item 11, Utley Community School in Chadderton, and I'd like to hand over to Abiola, who's going to take us through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening. So this application is for a variation of a condition attached to a previous permission on the football pitch in the school. The application is before the committee because the site falls within lands owned by the council, and there have been some objections to the planning application. So the site is actually located in Utley Community School in Chadderton. Okay, so on the screen there is a plan showing the location of the site edged in red. That's the actual football pitch, and the blue lines there actually indicate the entire school site. So this is an aerial view of the school, just in the middle of the image there. And then the pitch in question is just to the bottom of the school buildings within the green patch. So as you can see on the screen there, the school is actually surrounded by residential developments, but between the site, the actual site, and the residential development, there is this green space which serves as a buffer between the pitch and the schools and the houses. So the condition to which the application relates is condition 3 of planning application PA 341172/17, and that's the wording of the condition on the screen there. So the condition specifically just limits the use of the pitch to the school pupils and within the hours of 8 in the morning and 5:30 in the evening. So the current application now seeks to open the use of the pitch to not just the pupils alone, but to the wider community, and also from 9 in the morning till 9:30 in the evening. So the issues relate, the material planning issues associated with the proposal include impact on the character of the area, impact on amenity and highway issues. So having regard to the nature of the proposal, it's considered there will be no significant impact on the character of the area. The pitch is there, and there are no construction works proposed as part of this application. So nothing's going to change in terms of visual issues. So no impact on the character of the area. In relation to amenity, the potential impacts are noise and light pollution. So with regard to noise, as shown in the previous slide earlier on, the pitch is actually well separated from the residential dwellings around, but notwithstanding, officers requested that the applicant submits a noise survey and conducts a noise survey and presents a report to us. So they did commission a noise survey and submitted a report which was reviewed by the council's environmental health officers, and they agreed with the findings of the survey and came to the conclusion that with the proposed hours of use, they do not think that the proposal would generate so much noise as to cause any noise nuisance. And in relation to light pollution, members will recall that a planning application was approved at the committee in January for the installation of some floodlighting on the pitch. So as part of the assessment of the application, the issue of potential noise pollution was considered, and members came to the conclusion that there will be no significant noise pollution. So this current proposal will be relying on the floodlights already approved in January. So, and as it's been established that the floodlights will not generate any light pollution, so it is considered that this current proposal will not cause any significant light pollution. And in relation to highway issues, the applicant has provided some information relating to the use of the pitch. They've stated that the pitch is not the standard football pitch, and therefore is only used by a specific range of users. It doesn't meet the Football Association standards, so it's usually only used by kids and maybe for smaller teams, like maybe 5-a-side or 9-a-side. So that would actually limit the range of uses there. And then in relation to parking, they have said that the pitch will only be made available to the wider community when school is not in session. So there will be no conflict between staff parking and then other members of the public using the pitch. So, but all the same, the highway engineer still requested a parking management plan is provided. So the applicant provided a parking management plan, and they indicated that there will be sufficient parking within the school premises to facilitate any use by members of the public. So we've reviewed the parking management plan and the way they intend to implement it. There will actually be almost 80 parking spaces available. So that's considered to be sufficient for the proposed use. So that's again the site context, and on the basis of the above assessment, officers have come to the conclusion that the application be recommended for approval. But before, subject to conditions, there's a late item issue there circulated earlier today, and that just relates to the wording of condition 4, which is the hours of use condition. So, I mean, the reason it was decided to reward the condition was to make it more enforceable. And officers, again, have recommended the application for approval subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Abiola. Can I, Councillor Davis?
Thanks, Chair. You described in your presentation there about the 80 parking spaces. Whereabouts are they located? Are they new spaces, or are they taking into account the local roads and stuff like that?
Yeah, so the 80 spaces will be existing parking spaces within the school premises. Just above the red line there, above the football pitch, just to the south of the school buildings, they've got some parking spaces there. And then again at the front, just towards the edge of the blue line to the northeast of the site, there are parking spaces. So in all, they have about 80 parking spaces within the school premises.
Thank you.
So they do not intend to use the public highway at all, as stated in the parking management plan.
Thank you, Abiola. Any further questions from members? We'll go with Councillor Cosgrove. You get there in the end.
It's a question for Wendy. I'm just looking at how it's made up to access the parking, and there's quite a long stretch there where it's one lane. Do we think there's going to be a bottleneck? So you come off the public highway, going onto the road, and even if you have a one-way system with a car park, people coming out will meet people coming in. I'm just thinking, when you have football matches on, you've got a big turnover with quite half an hour. And if you've got, especially if they're going to hire it out to young people that have started driving or families bringing, just a bit concerned.
So when I made the assessment, the parking spaces are existing. So I've considered that they're acceptable for.
So you don't think there'll be a bottleneck on that long stretch?
In the parking management plan also, I might as well just explain that now. It involves a member of staff or from the operator, whoever is running the particular match, so not necessarily the school, directing people to the parking spaces. And if there's an event at the school, the pitch doesn't operate for community use, so that the impact on the local highway network should be negligible, especially considering what it is during pick-up and drop-off times, usually.
Thanks for clarifying that, Wendy. I think Councillor Williamson had her hand up. Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor?
Thank you, Chair. Just to add on to our colleagues over there, we asked the spaces of 85 spaces, and these are not new spaces. So, I mean, these are existing spaces which are already being used. So, will be the extra spaces needed? No?
So the spaces are there, and the parking management plan. So we were very clear that we wanted a parking management plan where the measures could be enforced. so they can be identified and enforced if they're not, if it's not implemented properly. So the spaces are existing, but that doesn't mean they'll be used at the same time as the pitches. So when there's an event at the school, the pitches won't be used. So when parents and teachers are parking for an open evening, the pitches won't be in use. And when the school's in use, the pitches won't be used by parents taking children to the pitches or young adults driving to the pitches.
Thanks, Wendy. Any further? Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Chair. I made a few notes before we come for this one because it had been here before. I mean, as Wendy alluded to there, they said that there's going to be somebody who's going to control the facilities, where to park and all the rest of it. Are they going to be there all the time from 9:30 or when the school closes until 9:30 in the evening, and weekends and when the school's not in? That's the first one. If you want to go to that, you can.
So I don't forget them. So the person directing traffic will be there when the matches are on, and this is quite small scale as well. Being very honest, they can't make people park in the car park, but if you've got the opportunity to park in a car park, you will probably park in the car park close to the facility. So that's the first thing, and the answer to that question.
So if I can come back on that then, so what happens if it's approved that they can have these extra hours and all the rest of it, and they don't have somebody doing that role? Would the planning application be rescinded?
So that would be part of the. So that is the condition, and the reason we've done it as a document, and it's listed it's named in the condition as a parking management plan. So we've got this document that we can say we've had reports from residents that actually the majority of the time you're not allowing somebody or employing somebody, it wouldn't be employing somebody. There's nobody there to direct people to the car park. You need to do that because, and then is it breach of condition? Yeah.
That's what Wendy's saying in terms of, so you can't rescind the permission, but if there's a breach of the condition because the parking management plan isn't being undertaken properly, we can take enforcement action in that sense to say, I mean, initially it would be a case of we contact them and say, start doing it. You know, obviously it's an ongoing thing, and they can immediately rectify that in all future events. But obviously, if they consistently don't comply with it, then we can take enforcement action for consistent breach of condition.
Okay, so if I've got a couple of things, if it's all right, Chair.
Please proceed.
So the next one is probably Peter. I suppose it'll probably be you again or whoever. There's a car park on here. There's gates. So when these people are looking after the facilities, them gates will be locked, will they, or will they stay open? Because it's great that these facilities are open to the public, but I mean, people live there, don't they? I mean, you get antisocial behaviour going on, and you know, if there's nobody there managing it.
So, I mean, first of all, again, we have to factor in that we can't control antisocial behaviour in that way. You know, it's not a planning thing that we can ultimately control. But in a sense of would the gates be open while the school is in operation? I presume you can ask the applicant in a moment, obviously. But I presume while the school's in operation, those gates are open anyway. Obviously, while the pitch was being used outside of school hours, the gates would be open because traffic might be coming and going at different times. And that's quite normal, I would say, for a school or a facility like this when it's in operation. But obviously, when it's closed, when it's finished, that event, the gates would be locked and secured for the security of the school.
Does that satisfy you?
No, the one more thing. So if it's okay, I'll just one more. And the other thing is, obviously, the school's going to be closed when the facilities are open to the public. What about toilet facilities? What are people going to do if they need to go to the toilet? Again, antisocial behaviour potential there.
So two things on that. One is you can ask the applicant for that when they speak, because I think they're probably better informed to answer that question. But secondly, it's not actually relevant to the application before us, because there is already a pitch there that can be used in certain hours. The application is simply to vary those hours of operation. It's not a requirement that has to be toilet facilities for that or anything like that. But obviously the applicant will be able to answer your question, I'm sure, but they'll be willing to.
You satisfied, councillor? Thank you. I'm going to call the objector forward, please. Do we have a Marilyn Camus, apologies. Just when you're ready, Marilyn. Just press it once and leave it on.
4th of January 2018, approval was granted for the use of the all-weather pitch. The pitch wasn't the problem then, and it isn't now, but the potential use of the ground for commercial purposes is. So what about commercial hire? Additional traffic for one, and while the school may tell you that their car park will be open, so users can park within the school grounds, there is no requirement to do so. I know as councillors you will hear the moan about parents, etc., and parking outside local homes. The difference in our case is that it won't stop once the school day ends. It just the start of other vehicles coming in of an evening from wherever on a Saturday and a Sunday. Imagine the number of vehicles that would come should the school allow use of the facility by a junior league. How would you and your residents enjoy having vehicles coming and going from 9 a.m. until 9:30 p.m, 7 days a week, 52 weeks of the year? That is what is being recommended to you. While there may be some respite during school holidays for your residents, there will be none for me and my neighbours, as the pitch is available even then. And what about the school grounds being open all evening, also 7 days a week, 52 weeks of the year? With the lights being on, it is certainly going to be an attractive proposition for children to make use of the open door approach of the school. Sorry. These are important issues, and I hope that the officers will not seek to simply waft them away when they are responded. We have enough issues with traffic already. Give us some peace, please, once school is out. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Marilyn. Do we have any members' questions for Marilyn? No? Okay. Marilyn, thank you for your time.
Okay, cheers.
Thank you. I'd like to now call forward to speak on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Bahati. Hopefully I've pronounced that correctly.
Close enough.
Close enough, sorry. I'm glad you've not took offence, thank you.
Evening. I'm conscious I've run over a few times when I've been here in the past, so I'll do it in bullet points now. I've been at the school for 28 years, 20 years as a senior leader. It's been a good or outstanding school all that time. It's the biggest primary school in Oldham. We've got over 650 pupils. That will cause problems with parking and traffic at pinch times. But we've got to be careful we're not confusing school time, 650 children, and nearly 100 staff arriving with a nine-a-side football pitch. The traffic and the parking and the number of people arriving are complete. It's apple and pears. We already have dance clubs, church groups, youth clubs, martial arts and gymnastics taking place. We want to be a community school. Doing all these extra things is extra workload for me. I get phone calls at weekends, in the evenings, but I think it's really important to give the youngsters something to do. We talked about antisocial behaviour, but we're trying to do something about it by giving them other opportunities. The floodlights that you approved earlier this year, the school overjoyed. There'll be over 100 pupils who attend our sports clubs that normally stop during the winter months that we won't have to stop anymore, so that's fantastic. And we're keen for further community use, evening, the weekends. There's no pressure, I've mentioned already, for the parking spaces. I think the planning officer mentioned 8, it's actually 73, and then we do have some opportunities to double park, but it's ample. The parking management plan talks about, even if you factor in a crossover, about 40 vehicles, because obviously children will be arriving with a parent, but if every child arrived with a parent, every single child, bearing in mind the coach and the assistant coach child usually plays, you're looking at about 40 at the crossover. So the 20 odd for the first match and 20 odd for the second match, so plenty of parking. School's been really sympathetic. We've waited for the LED lighting to be improved. We've done the parking management plan as requested. We've done the noise survey, all at the cost of the school. Like I say, the staffing, it's in the school's interest to have it staffed. The entrance to the pitch would actually be, would be here. So parking on the road to walk all the way up here to actually gain entrance defeats the object. As you know from parents and people, they park as close as they can. The most popular parking spaces, I'll tell you, will be here, where they have the shortest amount of walking to do. And having the member of staff on site for school security, I mean, using the pitch for the community is great, but we've got to make sure the school site, which is £5.5 million, needs to be kept secure. You talk about antisocial behaviour, but having it lit up and a member of staff on the evening will alleviate some of the issues we've seen over the years. We built the pitch here. The blue line isn't actually correct. The school site goes all the way around. All of the green is a school site. We've built it there, really close to the school, and not come out further to make sure we don't impact on residents. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do we have any questions from members? Peter, Councillor Davis.
Yeah, it's just the questions that I asked before regarding toilets, for example. You could understand potential of what could happen if someone needs the toilet.
Yeah,
and the other one is, you know, I'll leave it to you after this. Is the staff? You can assure there's going to be staff, and the gates are going to be locked when there's no staff on there. They're going to help people park the cars and stuff like that, are they?
Yeah, so the toilet issue is an issue. It's not a huge issue. I've been involved in junior football for over 20 years, coaching and with my own children. The majority of the facilities we use don't have toilets or changing rooms. The children come change, they get out of the car, they play the game, and off they go. But watch this space. I'd like to come back. I would like to have toilet facilities. It would help for the school use as well when we use the facility for lessons. It's a long way to go back, so we'll probably be back with a toilet block we'd like to put close by. The security, as I mentioned, it's in school's interest. If there's nobody on site, school's locked up. We don't have it open without anybody on site because of, as been mentioned, there is some antisocial behaviour in the area. This is something to hopefully combat the antisocial behaviour.
Thank you. Any further questions? I've just got one from myself. If you're going to have staff members on site, could they not make internal toilet facilities available?
It'd make it more difficult because they'd have to have access to the school building, and I'll say this right now, the level of staff, the level that the staff member would have to be employed at to be able to be a key holder to open the main school building would be considerably higher than somebody who we'd be able to employ just to do the gates. Because actually, it's only 3 gates that need opening with the same key to allow the facility to be used.
Okay, thanks for that. Any further questions? No? Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'd like to call Councillor Shuttleworth to speak on behalf of residents.
Thank you, Chair. Can I first of all say that what I'm going to speak about has nothing to do with the football pitch, the football area. That's an acceptance that is there, and it's good for the school and good for the school children. The objection I'm going to talk about is the community use. Because for those who don't know where the school is exactly, to get there you have to turn onto Lancaster Street. Lancaster Street is two-sided, not one property has a driveway. And of an evening, you've got 2 rows of vehicles outside the properties. You then turn left into Alcester Street. You've got one row of properties, none of them have a drive. So vehicles are parked on the road. And as Mr. Barty will recall, some years ago, we worked with the school to introduce a one-way system down Alcester Street to try and relieve school traffic. And then when you get to the bottom, you turn onto Arden Street. You've got a couple of properties on your right-hand side that have got a drive. None of the others down that street, that road, have driveways. So it's very congested. Now, this has been, if you'll pardon the expression, a creeping application, in the sense that, first of all, we had the all-weather pitch that was actually a retrospective application. We then had the floodlights being introduced, and that was dealt with in 2017. And if I may just quote from what it said there, for a temporary period of 12 months from the date of this permission, the use hereby approved shall not operate outside of the following hours. And then it went on to say 0800 hours to 1900 hours Monday to Friday, 0900 hours to 1300 hours Saturday, 1000 hours to 1300 hours Sunday and bank holidays and public holidays. And it said, following the expiration of the 12-month period specified above, the school use shall thereafter be limited to use by pupils of Utley Community School between the following hours. And it gives that. And it was done there so the local planning authority could assess the impact of the use on the local area. As far as I know, there's not been an impact assessment made, and therefore this planning application shouldn't proceed unless that is in place. I'm a little confused in terms of what we talk about in terms of the vehicles, because if you look at the present papers, if you look on 12.4, it said the parking management plan indicates that the school has about 70 off-street parking spaces. Now, Mrs. Camus wrote to Mr. Barty towards the back end of last year. And there's the response. Unfortunately, it's not dated. I think it's probably November, December time when residents were made aware of the proposals. And what Mr. Barty tells people is that we currently have 49 spaces in the car park closest to the pitch. So not 70 as shown in here. On top of that, there are about 5 or 6 minibuses that are parked in there. So that further reduces the parking availability. Now, while we can talk about having a member of staff getting people to go on the car park, there's one thing to have a member of staff there, and it's another thing to actually get people to use it. Because I would imagine there's not one councillor around these tables tonight who haven't at some stage had an approach from residents about parking outside of school. Now, I know Mr. Barty had a number of emails exchanged with my colleague, Councillor Harrison, on this very subject, because people are concerned about what goes on. As Mrs. Camus said, there are problems there. You know, one person on that car park isn't going to stand there from 9 in the morning till 9:30 at night directing traffic. Come rain, hail or sun. It just isn't going to happen. And the head of planning made reference to we can't control ASB. I agree with him, but we can mitigate it, and we mitigate it by keeping the school grounds closed. Because you can bet that as night follows day, once those gates are open of an evening and lights are on, it's going to attract children to go into the school. It will happen. I think it's inevitable. And is one person then going to start chasing the kids away? And I know Mr. Barty, I think he said his emphasis is on junior football. Yeah, which is good, but it doesn't restrict it to junior football. It includes senior football, and it will not be down to children. So I would ask members to reject this as it stands at the moment, or if you're minded to do it, go back to what happened 7 years ago with these conditions, and let's make an assessment rather than an assumption that everything's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
No problem, thank you. Just if I could ask the first question. If you were sat on this committee, what would your grounds for refusal be?
Well, I suppose one way of describing it is it's not a bad project, but it's in the wrong place. It will be a traffic congestion. Congestion issue? Well, if you've got Lancaster Street, you've got vehicles parked on either side of the road, and you turn into Arden Street, you've got vehicles parked there, you've only got one way down.
Yeah, so as I say, specifically, you would reject this on traffic congestion?
Well, on traffic, but also in terms of the staffing of it. You know, there's more to hiring out a facility like this than just putting some lights round an all-weather pitch. There's more to it.
Could is it appropriate or within protocol if I could ask you to just clarify whether them 2 points would be a valid reason to object to this proposal?
So, taking the second one first, 'cause I think that's simpler for me. I would not recommend the second one simply because it's not the job of us as a planning committee to determine how they staff their facility. In terms of the first point, obviously traffic congestion is a valid planning reason, but I think from the point of view of us as a highways authority, and obviously I'm sure I can see Wendy's prepping to come in, I think, here, you know, we've assessed it and we're comfortable that, obviously, I can't say there won't be any impact. Development has an impact, but it's a question of, is it so significant? Because again, the test in National Planning Policy Framework is it has to be a significant impact on highway safety or the wider road network. And I don't think we can, as a professionals, we're not at that place where we can say that test is being met. So it's not the wrong subject area. It's just we don't agree that it could go that far.
Sorry, Wendy. To elaborate.
I'll just explain how I assessed it. So at the moment, we've got congestion because of parents picking up and dropping off at school. So I have to assess the effect of the development. I'm not looking at the wider school, only in regard to, is the traffic generated by the development as bad as the traffic generated by the school? And it isn't. It's negligible compared to what is already happening. So I don't consider, I think if this went to an appeal, and Peter will help me out here, the planning inspector would probably say, well, we've put measures in place to deal with the traffic that is already happening at the school, and the effect on the development on the local highway network is negligible because it won't happen at the same time as the existing school traffic, which is happening. So I don't disagree with the fact that there are cars parked and that there will be some additional traffic, but it won't have a severe impact on the network.
Thank you, Wendy. Sorry. Yes.
One of the difficulties with this facility is that we still get residents who will complain about parking. Now, we can talk to people that nobody has the right to park on the highway as much as we want, but try telling that to the householders. Now, if this goes through on a Saturday, you know, people already say when I get home from work, there's cars parked where I live because they're going to the school. If this is open on a Saturday and a Sunday, people will go shopping. They're going to come back because we cannot compel people to use the school car park. They will park where they want to do. And if that's outside somebody's house, that's going to cause more problems. And I'd further add that there are some who actually want us to make the whole area a one-way system because of traffic issues. And this is only adding to it. It's not taking away from it, it's adding to it.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any questions for Councillor Davis?
Thanks, Chair, again. Councillor Shuttleworth, I know you said you'd like this to be rejected by the committee, but would a compromise, I know you mentioned about the hours, would a variation on the hours and not so many hours, do you think that would help? Would that smooth things over?
yes, residents need a respite. You know, as tried to be expressed there. You know, they get enough during the week. They don't want it Saturdays, Sundays, and you've got the school holidays coming up. They don't want it for 6 weeks. Traffic constantly coming and going, which is what happens on an all-weather pitch. That is a difficulty. But as I also said, that there was the option 7 years ago for the school to do something about it. They chose not to. And now here we are, without any recommendation for assessments to be made, looking to give the school carte blanche, 7 days a week. Now, how many of you around this table would welcome the opportunity that somebody's going to start riding up and down your road for 7 days? I don't think you would like it. And I think it's the same for residents. It's not an appropriate site.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove.
I'm not sure if it's a question Graham can answer, but I've just had a look at the aerial view, and there's a footpath which is a lot nearer to the pitch from the road, the public highway. Do we know if that's going to be secure? Because if that's the case, then what you'll find is parents will park outside the school grounds and actually walk into the pitch because it's nearer.
Well, I presume it's the footpath you talk about between the school and the bowling club.
No.
On Bowling Green Close. No?
No, it's off Alcester Street on the bend. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I know. Yeah, right. That one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what? Sorry, Councillor Cosgrove. Your question is about it.
Do we think it will be shut during the hours when it's not school time?
No, it's free access on that path.
Is it a public right of way?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. That's.
Don't you? That's gates.
Right, so there's no public access. It's there.
Okay, so we've got clarification on that. It's okay. Any further questions for Councillor Shuttleworth? Thank you, Councillor. We now open to the floor. Has any members got any comments? Or Councillor Hartness?
Yeah, so I think I remember this application coming previously. So we've already approved the principle of having floodlights, which could be used between 5:30 and 9:30, but they can't actually use the pitch according to these hours. So I mean, you know, it was inevitable then that they were going to get something back on this. So in terms from planning grounds and stuff like that, I think it's also, you know, we can't use the highways argument because the added, we're talking about the change that's going to be generated from increasing the hours slightly, aren't we? And I just can't see how that could be, you know, and the hours officers already given their views, so I just don't see how we could sort of refuse on those grounds. So based on that, I would recommend approval. Sorry.
Okay, just let me get a piece of paper in front of me. Sorry, it's a bit quick, that one. So we're going to vote on approval. Sorry, we've got to. No, that's fine.
With the conditions.
With the conditions as stated. All those in favour of approving? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry, could you raise your hands again just so I can... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, that was correct. I counted myself, didn't I? I did. Twice. Not twice in one count, but twice. Right, okay. So we can do it if you want. Those against. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Approval is granted. Oh, sorry, abstentions as well. Sorry, Diane, thanks for leading me correctly. There we go, on one abstention. So approval He's granted. Thank you. Sorry, Brian, you couldn't vote on that. Thanks. So we now move on to, or back to rather, item 7. Okay, no problem. Thank you for your attendance. Could we make a note? Obviously, just doing the minutes. Oh, right. Okay, fine. Right. I'm just happy to be off social media for a couple of hours. Okay, we move on to item 7. And if Graham could walk us through that one. Thank you.
Given how late it is, I'll try to go faster than a walk. So this is an application. It relates to a site just on the edge of the town centre, adjacent to the ring road, presently vacant site, currently owned by the council. It's bordered by a cafe building, by some Metrolink infrastructure, and on its northern side by the Metrolink line itself that runs in at a lower level to the site. So the application, as you can see, is for the development on the site of a building which will provide 15 one-bedroom supported living apartments for the single homelessness programme in the town, and obviously there's some communal facilities also with that in the building. So this is the site itself. So in the central area, as you say, the ring road just there to the left of the picture, the Metrolink tram line to the top of the picture. It's a cul-de-sac down at the bottom of there, some of the college buildings directly opposite, and the listed church, which is a little bit further up alongside Foundry Street. So this is the frontage to the site. There's an existing access to the previous use of the site, which is there. As you can see, there are a number of trees along the frontage of the site, and you'll also see a bit later within the site itself. So these are the two boundaries. So this is the small cafe building on one side of the entrance, and then the infrastructure to the Metrolink tram on the other side of the entrance. Within the site itself, there's a largely open area, but around the fringes of the site is considerable tree cover within those particular areas. And these are just a couple of views showing you a view into and out of the site from the northern side across the tram tracks, just say a much lower level within the site. So this is the development site itself. The main section you can see in the middle, that's the two-storey section, which has got the living accommodation on the ground and first floor with associated office accommodation. On the right-hand side, the smaller block there, that's a single-storey building, provides the associated communal facilities. There are 4 parking spaces will be provided off the access way at the entrance to the site, and a significant, although some trees will be removed as part of the development, significant amount of replacement planting on the site. Just showing this particular one, there was an objection originally received to the application, which has now been withdrawn. It's related to a small area of land adjacent to the access way, and the objection was withdrawn following details shown on the plan that wouldn't have obstructed a future access to that land should the owner wish to agree such with the new landowner. So these are the buildings themselves, as I say, main 2-storey structure and a single-storey structure, as you can see on the right-hand side. The other elevations of the building. And the floor plan areas, you can see 2 for the 2-storey accommodation section of the site. And this is just an indicative view of the proposal when it's finished. So as I say, this is for specialist accommodation, much needed and supported by the council's officers in terms of providing the accommodation which is currently in short supply within the area. It's a development that will make practical use of this particular site. There are a number of issues to do with biodiversity, trees, acoustic attenuation on the site and air quality. Members will see that there are a list of conditions in the report to cover those matters, and subject to those conditions we would recommend the application for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. Do we have a question for the officer?
Thank you, Chair. So how many car park spaces are they looking at if you're going to have staff on site? Or are we?
Four.
Wendy?
Four.
Four.
Councillor Cosgrove?
How many staff will be present at the times?
I don't have that information for
So I'm just
each
thinking,
of them.
if there's
Yeah.
4 staff on at any one time,
Yeah.
then you need 4 bays.
Yeah. What we do look at is obviously well, again, I'm stepping on Wendy's toes a little bit. Obviously, we're in the town centre location, a very highly sustainable location. We wouldn't necessarily, as you'll know from other developments in the town centre, expect car parking to be provided where there are other means of transport that we would often use. There are waiting restrictions on the road outside the site as well, so this is a benefit in terms of there won't be congestion in those areas.
I think the people who are going to be making use of this facility are probably those who don't possess cars.
It wasn't what I was thinking. I think if you were doing shift work with
Oh,
people
yeah,
doing
I
supported living, you wouldn't want to be walking down the street at 10 o'clock at night
Yes, yeah,
to access
valid,
public transport. I mean, I don't know what hours it will be, but I'm just making sure there's enough on site that's safe.
I'm with you. Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Do we have any other members' questions? No? Okay, I'd like to call to the chair. Not wit. I like that. I'd like to call to the Nicola Rowe. Sorry, have you got one question? Sorry, Nicola, if you could
Sorry, Nick.
just one quick.
It's not a question. I mean, it's in a good location. We're quite happy
can
to
take a seat, Nicola,
We're quite happy to move this on and approve it, if everybody else is okay with that. And you have to listen. Okay, Nicholas.
Nicola's waited all this time. Nicola, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's Nicole, by the way.
Sorry, Nicole, I stand corrected. We'll minute that.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicant, Jigsaw Homes. A representative of Jigsaw Homes is also present today, so if there are any specific questions that are best answered by them in terms of the care provided at the facility, then just wanted to make you aware of that. We've heard from the officer about how the proposal is going to bring a brownfield site back into use and how they're recommending approval, so they have deemed it to accord with planning policy. So I'm not going to go over that again here. What I would like to highlight, though, is how this proposal has been the result of collaborative working with the council, and this started first with the identification of the site and followed through to pre-application advice, which was acted upon and fed into the design process. And then once the application was submitted, we also made numerous amendments over the course of the application in response to consultation comments from the likes of MIAS, the tree officer, Metrolink, and the owner of the adjoining property. So you've heard that this is a facility that is going to be providing sheltered accommodation that is specifically for young adults, so that's people aged between 18 and 25. There are currently 8,000 households on the council's housing register, and 646 of those are housed in temporary accommodation. 35 of those are single young people under the age of 25 that have support needs. So that's young people who are in the care system that require a stepping stone towards independent living. So this development will directly meet that need. The funding has been secured already, and this is through the government, a combination of the government's Brownfield Land Fund, the Single Homelessness Accommodation Programme, the Levelling Up Fund. It will be delivered by Jigsaw Homes, but it will be managed by Jigsaw Support, who have a very strong track record in these types of facilities. As the funding is already in place, this means that should you grant planning permission this evening, the scheme can be delivered and ready for occupation in autumn next year. So this is a case of everything being in place to meet that clear need. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. I personally think the social value of this is obvious, but if anyone's got any questions. Short and sweet that, Nicole. Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Have all the speakers finished, Chair, by the way? I mean, I'd like to... I've been a bit of a rebel tonight, but on this one, I'd like
Is that how you'd word it?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
I'll make a note of that. Thanks.
I'd like to recommend this for approval. I think it's massively needed. I think it's a good project.
Second that. We'll all second that.
Right. Just for clarity, can we have someone who seconds it? And not? I'll go with Councillor Nasheem, and all in favour. Unanimous. Thank you very much. We're now on item 8, referred to as Little Wembley's training pitch at Oldham Athletic. And is this one for you as well, Graham?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. This is another application to vary a condition originally imposed on this, and in fact, in this case, imposed by members of this committee at an earlier meeting. In effect, to cut that as short, members in allowing the approval limited the start times for the facility until 10 a.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. The club, you'll have read the report, the club have come back and said that will have a significant impact on the facility that they're wishing to provide, and therefore can that be altered to 9 a.m. I would say that originally they were looking at 8 a.m, so this is a compromise even on behalf of the club from that point of view. Office has recommended approval of the earlier hour, so you'll not be surprised to know that we're also recommending approval of this application. So as I say, simply Saturdays and Sundays, a start time of 9 a.m. rather than 10 a.m. There are houses within the immediate vicinity of the site, so just showing you here. So these are just some of the images around the site boundaries. So there is a potential for impact on residents, but again, activity around the area will be quite high at those times in the morning in normal circumstances. So as simple as that, really. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. Like I say, this is we're going over this one as previous. Has anyone got any questions for Councillor Hurley?
Right, obviously I wasn't here previously, but where this is situated is on Broadway. So we've also got Clayton playing fields. So has there been some, I don't know, maybe you can answer that, Wendy, around highways, around generating the traffic on Broadway, which is horrendous, especially Saturday and Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, Peter, because we have got football teams playing on Clayton fields at Mill as well. So that all has an impact on. So if this opens at 9 o'clock, when everything else is going on, you know, we don't get a break. No one will get a break on Broadway. The residents do get a bit of break on a Saturday and Sunday early morning.
Peter?
Okay. So in terms of the original application, all the matters you're raising were relevant and were considered as part of that.
I wasn't here then, Peter. So
no, I appreciate you.
Give me some clarification.
But the point is, well, that was because that was covered in that application, it's not something you can consider in this application, because all we're looking at is that change of hours. It's not the fact that there's a pitch there that might be generating traffic. It's simply the change of hours of operation that we can consider on this application now. But I'd quite happily talk you through separately what happened with the last application and how it was considered, if that's helpful to you another time.
Yeah, if you could email me that tomorrow, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Hurley. Councillor?
Well, thank you, Chair. I think it would be appropriate to basically make members aware in terms of how we came to that decision of 10 o'clock. In terms of what's the pitch was extended, it's a lot bigger than what it was in the past. It's closer to residential properties, and secondly, in the past it was used as a practice pitch, whereas now it's been opened up to the public to use, and the usage of it will increase.
I think we're sort of saying there we're being asked to question our original decision and the reasons behind it. Does anybody else have any?
Briefly, Chair, I concur with what Councillor Akhtar and Councillor Hurley said. And I have to say that, you know, it's already, on Clayton playing fields itself, it's already busy. You know, Elk Mill's busy, Broadway's busy, then if you've got a match day, it's busy. And, you know, all right, it's you come to a compromise on the hourage, but that different... Sorry.
Just thinking out loud, I thought we did compromise originally.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just
saying.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yes,
that's fine. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that that you know, the extra hour on a Sunday does make a difference to residents, I think, and I think that's what we need to just consider here. That, you know, that's going to be there, but it's just these hours that, you know, it's just going to make it a little bit worse, I think.
Thank you for that, Councillor Quigg. Any other members? Sorry, Peter, would you like to?
It's fine, just to address a couple of those points. So, yeah, just to clarify in terms of what was decided last time, from my recollection, it wasn't to do with the size of the pitch, Councillor Akhtar, because the pitch is pretty much the same size. It's more, like you say, the intensity of the use, the fact that it's good community uses, and as Councillor Quigg has just said, that idea that I think members went for 10 a.m. because of that concern of the impact on members, so on residents. Sorry. So that's fundamentally that really boils down to this is what we're considering today. Is do we feel originally they wanted 8 a.m. We said 10 a.m. Do we feel the compromise of 9 a.m. is appropriate or not? That's ultimately the actual decision we're making. That's all.
Thank you, Peter. I don't think there's any more. I'd like to. I nearly said gear then. Well, you're not. You've got to look. Just keep, there we go. Richard G. Sorry, Richard. Yeah, just press it once.
Yeah, okay. Right, thank you. So I'll Graham summarised. I'll just skirt through those bits. But so during the committee last December, the start times were changed to 10 a.m. because there was a concern expressed about 8 a.m. early start. And again, as Graham's explained, we're not trying to go back to 8 a.m. We're applying for 9 a.m. start on Saturday and Sundays. So the effect of the reduction in hours that arose from that change at the last committee is effectively it's a 3-hour loss of usage every weekend. And that's a time in particular when the new pitch is programmed in for the use of junior teams. In simple terms, that change reduced the usage time across the year by 156 hours, which is equivalent to 22 days playing time. As I say, the change to 10 a.m. at the last committee related to suggested noise disturbance. So I just want to highlight a couple of points in that regard, if I can. So first of all, this is obviously an existing pitch. It's not a brand new pitch. It's to be replaced with a 3G pitch. The existing pitch has always been used from 9 a.m. and indeed earlier on Saturday and Sunday mornings, and is not subject to any controls at all. I'd also like to respectfully, if I can, point out that our investigations of every other 3G pitch across the whole of Greater Manchester reveal that 95% of those open at 9 a.m. or earlier on both Saturday and Sunday mornings. We've also pointed out as part of the application, and it's referred to in section 10.5 of your report, a very recent example of this council approving a very comparable 3G pitch, equally close to houses, but with nowhere near the same extent of noise mitigation measures, which I'll come on to a second, with a start time of 8 a.m. on Saturdays. And we're looking for 9 a.m. We've also submitted a detailed noise assessment, which has been based on the requirements, quite stringent requirements, of Sport England's acoustic policy for pitches. That assessment notes and confirms that the existing baseline noise levels today, before the new pitch, do not come anywhere close to the correct noise criteria. The same assessment, and again it's been endorsed by your environmental health team, notes that the replacement pitch will be sunk down into the ground by 2 metres and will have on top of that a 2.5 metre acoustic fence around it, and it will deliver significantly lower noise levels than the existing scenario. I think I've run out of time, but that's why we're applying for a 9 a.m. start. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Councillor Actor?
Yeah. Can you let us know if the pitch that you're proposing is larger than what the practice pitch is, and is it closer to the residential properties or not?
It's, I was going to say the word moderately, it's slightly larger than the existing pitch, but it's no closer to the existing houses. And in addition to that, as I've just explained, it's sunk down because of the levels. Believe it or not, the existing pitch isn't flat, so which is a bit tricky for a football pitch. So part of the scheme is to dig down to create the level area. And by happy coincidence, the digging down into the earth by around about 2.5 metres is at the end where the houses are. So that digging down by 2.5 metres, which is a considerable distance, that in itself creates a noise barrier. And on top of that is a 2.5 metre acoustic fence, which is why, in overall terms, this will present a very serious betterment in noise disturbance, if you like, than the existing situation.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, thank you, Richard. We'll move the item onto the floor. Councillor Harkness.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So last time I argued against these hours, which we actually proposed, and was more in favour of what the officer was suggesting to begin with, because particularly the weekend one, because it then just reduces the amount that pitch can be used, and I said that was likely to be at the time. Richard, I think, spoke and said that at the time, and that's come to fruition. It's a great asset, I think, which should be utilised. So I will propose that we recommend approval of the change of conditions.
Do we get a seconder?
I'll second that.
All in favour? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 in favour, all against? 4 and 1 abstention. So the motion to move has been passed. Thank you. Yeah, number 10. So now we're on item 10. If you could just outline why this has come to planning. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. This application's for a 2-storey rear extension at the property known as Belvedere, Greenbridge Lane in Greenfield. It's been referred to Planning Committee since the applicant is related to an elected member, Councillor Graham Sheldon.
Oh, sorry, we've run out of time for this evening. Can we? Sorry, I couldn't resist that. Please continue.
The application site's outlined in red. That's the property front and rear. neighbouring extensions, and side view. These are the proposed plans. It shows two-storey rear extension with the dimensions shown on there, and the elevations from the rear. All materials are to match, and that is the end of that presentation.
Question for the Officer Max? Do I get a seconder? All in favour? That's democracy. Moving on to item 12.
Thank you. So yeah, just a quick introduction to item 12, which is 66B Chew Valley Road in Greenfield. So this is an application for a first floor enclosed patio, which is essentially supported on a steel framed structure. Sorry, technical difficulties. So as you can see, it's the property that's slightly stepped back. So this is a view from the rear elevation, and it's simply an enclosed first floor balcony structure, which should be evident on the plans which are here. So they're the existing elevations. You can see there's an opening at the moment in the same location, and the proposed floor plans show the structure more evident at first floor level because it's supported by those two posts there, which are visible on the ground floor plan there. So the reason it's been brought to committee is simply for transparency, because the agent is a relation of Councillor El Hamdani. But having considered the application, it's fully policy compliant and it is recommended for approval subject to the conditions in the report.
Do I get a proposal to...
Yes, I'll propose it, please.
That's you proposing we pass, yeah?
Yes, please.
A secondary will be Max. All in favour? Thank you. And last but not least, or finally, we are on item 13.
Yep, thank you. Another householder. So again, for transparency reasons, this is an application submitted by Councillor Chohan, which is the trigger for a committee decision. It is for a first floor rear and side extension. It's quite contemporary in build, but it is a new build property. So you can see the location there in red. I think we've got an aerial image of this property as well, but here are the photographs just for a bit of context. You can see in the colour on the right-hand plan there, the footprint of the proposed extension. Again, shown in a shaded colour there, you can see the extent of the extension itself. And just for a little bit more clarity and context, this is the latest satellite image, which shows it's the property. Hopefully you can see my cursor dancing around, but it's that property there, just for a wider context. So again, policy compliant, recommended for approval.
Chair, can I move it for approval, please?
Yes, do I get a seconder? All in favour? The approval is, let me just do a recount. No, the approval is passed. And I think that's it. We've got one more item, okay. Sorry, we have an update on appeals. Have we got any?
Yeah, so the appeals are all, the updates in the report, if I'm not mistaken, they're all dismissed. The one important note, though, there is an update on the late list for some corrections, but they're all dismissed from memory. But if there's any they're only for noting, they're not for approving.
No, all noted. That's the meeting closed. Thanks for everybody's time and efforts.